Hello folks, I'm Ronald Mehta and welcome back to Digi8.com. We are your digital aid and we provide free courses on the subject of business and marketing. This video is a comprehensive take on the subject of service marketing along with live examples and case studies. The video covers close to 30 topics that falls under the gamut of services. Let's start with the first one. Let's start with the introduction to services. Services are offerings by a firm that are in the form of deeds, processes, and performance. A service is an activity or benefit that is extended by one party to another. It is intrinsically intangible in nature and does not result in the transfer of ownership. In the US, service sector contributes to more than 65% of their GDP. Service sectors include healthcare, banking, airlines, logistics, education, tourism, insurance, telecom, and information technology. Moving on to the characteristics of services that will lay the foundation for the entire module. Starting with the first one, intangibility. Services are intangible in nature and they are not a physical object. Then comes the characteristic of heterogeneity. It gets challenging to establish a standard for a service due to its inconsistency, variability, and non-standardization. Inseparability. It signifies that services are produced and consumed simultaneously because customers are a vital part of the service production process. And finally, perishability. It is a fact that services are perishable in nature and cannot be stored unlike a product or a good. Now let's look at each one of them briefly, starting with intangibility. A service is not a physical object. Hence, it cannot be seen, tasted, smelt, or felt like physical products. Since service is an experience, the customer does not know about the service until he or she uses it once. For instance, to know how a stay at Ritz-Carlton feels like, the customer has to pay and experience the stay. Moving on to the other characteristics of heterogeneity. It is challenging to establish a standard for service due to its consistency and non-standardization. All of this just because the service is often delivered by different people with different delivery times and different customer involvement levels. Example, a hairstylist's haircut and a professor's lecture may vary owing to the human involvement. Moreover, another example of a cabin crew. The quality of service experienced by a traveler while flying with an airline will differ each time depending on the cabin crew, your co-passenger, and the travel time. Then comes the characteristic of inseparability. It signifies that services are produced and consumed simultaneously because customers are a vital part of the service production process. This concept can be better understood through a comparison of services and goods. For instance, apples are products which are assembled in China or India, stored at multiple distribution units worldwide, and then sold by local retailers both online and offline in their country. On the other hand, a health checkup at a hospital is a service. First, one needs to pay a consultation fee, followed by a real-time doctor-patient session in which both parties need to be physically present for service delivery. Moving on to number 4, perishability. It is the fact that services are perishable and cannot be stored for later unlike goods. Additionally, services cannot be stored, saved, returned, or resold once delivered to a customer. For instance, a hotel room's rate is $1,000 per night. So the maximum monthly revenue owned from that room would be about $30,000, assuming there are 30 days in a month. However, if the room is unoccupied for 10 days, the hotelier loses about $10,000, which cannot be recovered as the service is perishable. Now moving on to key differences between physical goods and services. Goods are a thing, services are an activity or process. Goods are tangible in nature, services are intangible in nature. Goods are homogeneous, services are heterogeneous. In goods, production and distribution are separate from consumption, whereas in services, production, distribution, and consumption can occur simultaneously. The core value in case of goods are produced in the factory. In case of services, core values are produced when service providers and customers interact. In case of goods, they can be stored, services cannot be stored. There is transfer of ownership possible in goods, whereas in services there is no transfer of ownership. Irrespective of the amount you pay for a hotel room or an airline flight, you cannot own these services. And ultimately, there is no participation of customer required in the production process of goods, whereas in services, customers are involved in the production process. Now moving on to a concept of goods-service continuum which will make you understand what do we pay for today. Do we pay for goods, do we pay for services, or do we pay for a mixture of both? Goods-service continuum refers to a representation of the correlation between goods and services. What a customer gets today is a combination of goods and services, and there are 5 broad combinations. Starting with the first one, companies offering only tangible goods. Few companies provide only tangible goods but do not offer any services related or otherwise to the products. For instance, Red Bull. Next, services offered along with tangible goods. In case of technology-related goods, customers need to be familiarized about the installation and usage of the product. At such instances, delivery installation, operational training, after-sales service, workshop services are provided by the firm itself. Example, you buy a Tesla automobile, an Apple iPhone, Hitachi air conditioners, they all come with additional after-sales services. Moving on to the third combination of goods and services but in equal measure. Some goods and services are offered in nearly equal proportion to make it a pleasant experience for the customer. For instance, a stay at Ritz-Carlton and Starbucks. Fourth, services accompanied by minor goods. In such a case, the service accompanied by small tangible products either independently or as a part of the marketeer's offer. For instance, Etihad Airways for the airline service and JP Morgan Chase Bank. And the final example is of pure service which is not accompanied by any good. Companies may provide services that may not be accompanied by any goods. For instance, the service of physiotherapy. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on introduction to services and their key characteristics. These are the list of sources and links referred to for our content in the video. Thank you and stay tuned for more videos. Let's start with the service marketing triangle. According to the service marketing triangle, there are 3 types of marketing which must be carried out successfully for a service organization to succeed. The man behind the triangle is Christian Grondroos, and he developed one of the most popular strategic models for developing an overall marketing strategy for a service firm. He named 3 groups that play critical roles in the achievement of organizational goals. They are the company, which is the top management, the employees of the company, and the customers. Now, as I stated before, there are 3 types of marketing. Let's see which are those. The service marketing triangle advocates a 3-dimensional approach to formulating an overall marketing strategy. First is the external marketing, as you can witness, occurs between the company and its customers, which involves making promises. Next is the internal marketing, which occurs between a company and its employees, which means enabling promises. And finally is interactive marketing, which occurs between a company's employees and its customers, which entails keeping promises. Keeping promises which were made by the company to the customer. Let's look at each of these marketing strategies briefly along with a suitable case study, in this case of the Hotel Ritz-Carlton. Let's start with external marketing, which means making promises. The firm makes a certain promises to customers about what is expected to be delivered. Any communication that a customer receives before the service delivery can be observed at parts of its external marketing function. It is a regular action of the firm to promote the service offering to its customers and is carried out in various ways in the form of advertising, personal selling, sales promotion, etc. Let's take a case study of Ritz-Carlton's modernization. The Ritz-Carlton modernized its brand in 2015 to interest the modern generation. The hospitality chain launched a new logo as a luxury hotel chain changes its marketing in a bid to appeal to Generation Y. The new logo is a more vivid shade of blue that retains the brand's signature lion and crown. It is the first time in 32 years of the history of the hotel that the logo has been redesigned. The move is a part of a more comprehensive approach which makes the hotel chain look hippier and serve guests in a more informal way. Moving on to internal marketing, which enables promises. The left side of the triangle, as we saw initially, implies a critical role played by internal marketing. Internal marketing refers to a set of activities that the organization, as in the company, must carry out to guide, motivate, and reward its employees. It encourages employees to keep promises made to the customers. It tells us that unless a service employee are willing and able to deliver on the promises made on time, the organization at large will keep failing in keeping its promises. Thus, the service marketing triangle will collapse. It's all about treating your employees as internal customers, therefore internal marketing. For instance, Ritz-Carlton's efforts to empower their employees. Each employee, irrespective of their position at the Carlton, are referred to as lady and gentleman. In fact, they are authorized to spend up to $2,000 per guest per incident. They are motivated and are able to make quick decisions on their own in the moment to resolve any guest issue or maybe incident quickly or to make their experience memorable. The concept is to create an overwhelming stay experience for a guest. In fact, as stated by Simon Cooper, one of their ex-head honkos, a lot of the stuff that crosses my desk is not that they overcame a problem, but that they used their $2,000 to create an outstanding experience. Let's see how. For instance, there are stories about hiring a carpenter to build a shoe tree for a guest. In another case, a laundry manager who couldn't get a stain out of a dress after trying twice flew down from Puerto Rico to New York to return the dress personally. And finally, when a waiter in Dubai overheard a gentleman musing with his wife, who was in a wheelchair, that it was a shame he couldn't get her down to the beach. The waiter told the maintenance department, and next afternoon there was a wooden walkway down the beach to a tent that was set up for them to have dinner in. Moving on to interactive marketing, which involves keeping promises. Interactive marketing or real-time marketing comes at the bottom of the triangle. Here the firm employees directly interact with the customers. This is the point at which all promises are delivered or maybe not delivered if the experience is bad. Having a positive link between what is promised through external marketing and what is delivered through interactive marketing is very crucial. All the external marketing efforts are worthless if the promises are not being kept. In conclusion, all the three sides stated in the triangle are incredibly crucial for successful marketing and management. The case study of the Ritz-Carlton Gold Standard Rules for Customer Interaction. The hotel has gold customer standards, which includes the 3 steps of service. The 3 steps of service are: first, a gracious and genuine greeting. To use the guest name, anticipate and meet with each guest's needs and want. And finally, a fond farewell. Give a cordial goodbye and use the guest name for the same to create a more personal experience. The Ritz therefore got an 8.98 rating out of 10 according to Newsweek's America's Best Customer Service 2020 ranking. Another case study wherein Ritz-Carlton's resetting a customer's internal clock. Having proactive employee, Ritz always focuses on being prepared and planning ahead. One of the examples is their practices of resetting a customer's internal clock if the service is taking longer than the anticipated in delivering food orders. Let's see how. Just when a customer and his wife are about to ask about their order while having dinner at a hotel restaurant, the waiter appeared and gave them a tomato and mozzarella appetizer. This tactic worked with a relatively small gift with which the staff reset the internal clock with the customer by establishing a new time reference point. This way is certainly better than a waiter returning to a table multiple times and apologizing for the day. And finally, a case study of Hyatt, their concierge services, and their social media platform. The Hyatt brand takes on a contemporary approach to customer service, most prominently through its Hyatt Concierge social media platform. The brand shares an example of exemplary service quoting. We delivered a man care basket to a guest's room because he uploaded a picture of an ultrasound of his unborn child to Instagram. The caption read, "Having a great time at the hotel but really missing not being with my wife today after she sent me this." Our team contacted the hotel and the hotel sent him 4 different types of bacon, 4 different craft beers, a voucher to watch a movie, and a handwritten congratulations card from the team at the hotel. What a masterstroke. The guest was over the moon and immediately shared on social media and review sites. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on service marketing triangle. These are the list of sources and links referred to for our content in the video. Thank you and stay tuned for more videos. Let's start with the purchase process for services. It includes 5 stages, starting with problem recognition, information search, evaluation of alternatives, purchase decision, and finally the post-purchase behavior. Let's look at each of these stages briefly along with suitable case studies, starting with the first one, problem recognition. The buying process begins when the buyer recognizes that there is a problem or need. The need can be triggered by internal or external stimuli. For instance, a person passes through a bakery and sees fresh toasted bread that stimulates his hunger. Marketers need to identify the circumstances that trigger a need. They can then develop appropriate marketing strategies that trigger consumer interest. For instance, the brand Zomato. Zomato identifies external stimuli. Let's see how. India's largest food delivery and restaurant discovery service sends personalized push notifications to its customers engaging their external stimuli, as you can see on the left. They address users by their first name and frame the messages based on customers' past behaviors and orders. The images are visually appealing coupled with catchy and unique notification messages. The whole rationale is to be in sight all the time and keep engaging with customers to get their problem in place. Moving on to information search. There are several sources through which customers hunt for information regarding services. These entail personal sources, which include family, friends, neighbors, acquaintances, commercial sources through ads, salesperson, dealers, packaging displays, or public sources, which includes customer rating organizations and reviews given by industry experts. The service entity needs to ensure that they are available on all such platforms so that customers get the right information on time. Moving on to number 3, evaluation of alternatives. The consumer evaluates the alternative services that satisfies his or her needs with the available information. He or she evaluates the distinct features of the service, quality, and price. For instance, while choosing a restaurant, the customer considers factors such as food quality, menu, variety, price, atmosphere, and convenience. Please note, in services, the available alternatives are relatively smaller than goods because brand choice in services is limited. Moving on to the stage of purchase decision. After carrying out a thorough evaluation of various alternatives, the customers choose the service provider who will be able to satisfy his or her needs. The success of a service delivery largely depends on the service encounter. Hence, apart from motivating your staff who deliver the service provider must also be aware of the moods and emotions of the customer. The service provider should try to influence those moods and emotions in a positive way. For instance, Burger King's move during the post-COVID order strategy. In order to make the whole ordering mechanism safe, Burger King revealed a new touchless restaurant designs amidst the COVID scenario. In the drive-in model, guests can park their cars under solar-powered canopies. They can place orders through the Burger King app by scanning a QR code at the parking spot and have food delivered to their cars. Moreover, in the curbside delivery, orders placed in advance through the mobile app will have curbside delivery in dedicated parking spots. And finally, a suspended kitchen and dining room above the drive-through lanes will make it ideal for urban cities by reducing the building footprint. Moving on to number 5, that is your post-purchase behavior. Only after experiencing the service, the customer will be able to judge the quality of service in relation to his expectation and actual service delivered. The customer will experience some level of satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Satisfaction ultimately leads to brand loyalty, positive word of mouth, and repeat purchase. On the other hand, in case of dissatisfaction, service recovery should be done on the spot with the root cause analysis later of the service failure. And finally, looking at an example of how Burger King enticing McDonald's customers. Burger King has been McDonald's rival for a long time. Burger King spotted an opportunity and jumped into the conversation on Facebook when McDonald's didn't respond to its customers in Denmark. A lot of McDonald's burger fans woke up to a witty, funny and helpful reply from Burger King after months of inactivity by McDonald's on their Facebook page there. The whole exercise was titled the Whooper Reply. Along with the comment, Burger King also offered a free flame grilled Whooper to customers to compensate for the lack of attention by McDonald's, just jumping on to the purchase process bandwagon. So that's it folks, this brings an end to the topic on purchase process. These are the list of sources and links referred to for our content in the video. Thank you and stay tuned for our more videos. Let's start with the marketing challenges of services. The first one, as discussed in the Introduction to Services video, was customers never get ownership of services. In the case of goods, customers get ownership of the tangible product when they make a payment. In case of a service, customers usually obtain value without obtaining ownership of any tangible elements. This means that when you pay money for your gym fees and go and work out there, you don't get ownership for any of the weights and dumbbells present there. Irrespective of the amount paid by the customer to use the service, he or she never gets ownership of the service. So even if you pay $1,000 a night for a hotel room, you still don't get ownership of the tangible elements prevalent in the room in spite of the steep amount paid by you. There are a few exceptions such as including food services and installation of spare parts during delivery of repair services. Moving on. So in such instances, service marketers offer customers the opportunity to rent the use of a physical object. For instance, rental car or a hotel room. Next, to hire the labor and expertise of people, to rent as a loan a sum of money, to subscribe to a network, and finally to pay for admission to a service facility. Moving on to the next challenge, services cannot be inventoried. Service is a deed of performance, it is perishable and so cannot usually be stocked as an inventory after being produced. Although facilities, equipment and labor can be held in readiness to create service, these elements simply represent productive capacity, not the product itself. If there is no demand during a given time, unused capacity is wasted, such as hotel rooms during off-peak period. During periods when demand exceeds capacity, customers may be sent away disappointed or asked to wait until the sufficient capacity is available to serve them. Nightclubs on weekends are typically packed. An example in this case are of planes flying empty. Thousands of planes are flying empty due to a pre-pandemic policy on airport usage. This leads to the phenomenon of ghost flights in the air. Germany's national airline Lufthansa has admitted to running 21,000 empty flights in an attempt to keep hold of the airport slots. Usually, ghost flights are well kept secret in the airline fraternity, but Lufthansa is so far the only airline to make the figures public on its own. Next, intangible elements dominate value creation. Many services often include important tangible elements such as a hotel bed, surgical equipment, restaurant menu, bank cards, and checkbook. But the most important aspect in a service are the intangible elements. These include the labor and their expertise that dominate the creation of value in service performance. Example of intangible elements include experienced doctors, knowledgeable teachers, chartered accountant, lawyers, and seasoned hairstylist. The best example in this case is of Salt Bay. The owner of Nusrat Steakhouse, known by its famous founder Salt Bay, is in talks to sell a stake to Qatar's $450 billion wealth fund. Now this makes sense because Salt Bay is famous for his own brand. So here Salt Bay is the intangible element in his restaurant, whereas the food given by him is the tangible element. Dream Group owns a stake in several restaurants, including this one, founded by butcher Nusrat Goke, as known as Salt Bay. Owned by Turkish billionaire, Dream Group may sell a 20% stake to Qatar Investment Authority for about $300 million. A deal at that price would imply a valuation of his hotel chain at $1.5 billion, all because of the intangible element Salt Bay. Moving on to number 4, customers may be involved in production. Many service requires customers to participate in creating the service product. Customer involvement may take the form of self-service such as withdrawing money from an ATM or cooperation with service personnel in settings such as hairdressers, hotels, colleges or hospitals. Under such circumstances, customers can be thought of as partial employees. Service firms have much to gain from trying to train their customers to make them more competent and productive. At number 5, other people are often part of the product. This is especially so in many high-contact services in which customers not only come in contact with service employees but also rub shoulders with other customers, such as standing in a queue at a fast food restaurant. As a result, the type of customers support a service business can shape the nature of the service experience. For instance, in a Champions League game, which is the entertainment sector, the behavior of the fans can add to the excitement of the game if they are enthusiastic but well behaved. However, if some of them become rowdy and abusive, it can spoil the enjoyment of other spectators at the stadium. It's as good as when you go to a movie theatre and there's someone talking loudly on their smartphone. At number 6 is many services are difficult for customers to evaluate. Certain services are called credence services. These entail the field of surgery, professional service such as accountancy and many technical repairs. They have credence properties which customers find difficult to evaluate even after consumption, as in they're difficult to judge. Because customers lack purchasing expertise in such areas, they are not knowledgeable themselves. Service marketeers can reduce customers' risk before a service purchase by helping them to match their needs to specific service features and educating them as to what they should expect during and after the service delivery. That's the reason when you go through a surgery, the doctor briefs you before the surgery and what you can expect after the surgery. Moving on to number 7, time factor assumes great importance. Many services are delivered in real time while customers are physically present. There are limits as to how long people are willing to spend at the service factory, as customers place a value on their time and some people are willing to pay for more faster service. Increasingly busy customer expects a service to be available at times when it suits them rather when it suits the service company. In response, more and more firms are offering extended hours, with some even staying open 24/7. Banks offer 24/7 banking through ATM and mobile banking. And finally, at number 8 is distribution channels could take different forms. Manufacturers usually require physical distribution channels to move goods from factory to consumers. But service businesses may choose to combine the service factory, the retail outlet and point of consumption at the same location. For instance, when you go to a restaurant, the factory is their kitchen, the retail outlet is where they are selling their food, that's the restaurant, and the point of consumption is the same place where the customer is eating. While some distribution channels range from visiting the bank in person to conducting home banking on the internet, quick service restaurants typically run an omni-channel model which entails eating on premises, pick your order and home delivery. So that's it folks, this brings an end to the topic on marketing challenges of services. These are the list of sources and links referred to for our content in the video. Thank you and stay tuned for more videos. Let's start with service marketing environment. Marketing environment that may impact your service business would entail the following: economic environment, political environment, regulatory environment, technological environment, socio-cultural environment, and demographic environment. Let's take a stab at each one of them briefly along with suitable case studies, starting with the demographic environment. Demography is study of population in relation to sex ratio, literacy rate, standard of living, rural-urban division, and the size of family, and so on. The market demand, requirements of consumers, etc. are based on demographic environment. The study of demographic environment has priority over other areas of business as business depends on people. Demographic changes have also contributed substantially to the growth of service marketeers. Moving on to the economic environment. Economic events within the country and outside also affect the economic environment. Changes in the economic policies of the government lead to a change in the economic environment. urbanization has widened the demand for personal and public services. With globalization, the demand for communication, travel, and tourism and information services has been increasing rapidly. For instance, Marriott International to launch the brand Moxie in India. In keeping in mind the quotient of affordability and style, Marriott International is also set to launch a brand Moxie in India. The global chain believes it will resonate strongly with the Indian customer base. Marriott International has a global umbrella of brands which entail the likes of Ritz-Carlton, St. Regis, Bulgari Hotels, Edition, and W Hotels in luxury space, besides premium hotels like Westin, Le Méridien, and Sheraton. In 2023, Marriott is set to open 20 properties in India, including the 300-room JW Marriott Bengaluru Prestige Golshare Resort and Spa, and in 2025, Marriott Marquis in Delhi. The global hotel chain operates 128 hotels in India at present across 16 brands and expects to open another 70 hotels by 2027. Moving on to the political environment. Political environment and economic environment are closely related as modern governments are concerned more with economics and less with politics. Political decisions create corresponding changes in the economic environment. A stable political environment is essential for the growth of the business. Political stability and satisfactory law and order situations are two basic requirements for the growth of business activities. Moving on to the legal and regulatory environment. In every country, the government regulates the business activities and the government rules and regulations create the regulatory environment. Regulatory environment creates a framework of regulations and legal provisions within which the business units must operate. What a business can do and what a business cannot do are decided by the regulatory environment. Legal systems of the country have a profound impact on the major decisions concerning both investments and operations in business. For instance, Citibank exits India. As a part of its global strategy, Citibank exited from its India operations in early 2022. India-based Axis Bank acquired Citigroup's consumer business. Axis Bank acquired Citibank's arm, which entailed the credit card business, the wealth franchise, and a set of premium customers for a whopping $1.6 billion. It is important to note that Citibank was one of the early entrants in India's credit card space. Its outstanding credit card declines stood at 2.5 million at the end of February 2022. The rationale behind Citi's exit can be majorly attributed due to increased competition from domestic players, differences in compliance guidelines, and poor asset quality issues, etc. Moving on to the socio-cultural environment. Socio-cultural forces are set factors including lifestyle, social values, and beliefs that affect the marketing activities of an organization. These factors have significant impact on the marketing of services. Health, beauty, travel, culture, and higher education have partly replaced durable goods as status symbols in the minds of many consumers. There has been an increasing trend in services like security, insurance, legal, medical, and investment. Moving on to the final, technological environment. Technological environment relates to the technology used in the production and other business activities. Technology has been particularly important for a service firm as it has been very successful in increasing the productivity, effectiveness, and enlarging the catchment area of service. Automation has given service firms a competitive advantage. The development of the internet and its popularity as a communication business tool has increased the possibility for service firms, as we witnessed during the pandemic era. Mobile banking and ATMs have increased the possibilities of 24-hour banking. Now moving on to 5G and banking in this space. It is estimated that by 2025, there should be over roughly 3 billion 5G subscriptions in the world. This will change the banking landscape forever. As a next-gen internet communication service, 5G brings a bouquet of improvements over its former technology 4G, which we are using currently. With digitalization undergoing a major change in the 21st century, banking for both customers and financial service providers will shift from a brick-and-mortar experience to the devices we own, such as a smartphone. 5G will expand its cloud in areas such as IoT, streaming, big data, and AI, and these will dominate the banking ecosystem to change it forever. In fact, the speed of payments will be simpler and faster, and the lack of bandwidth or heavy traffic would be a thing of the past. Hyper-personalization would take the lead, wherein banks would be connected via multi-channel experience by extending services to wearables and IoT devices, leveraging instant facial recognition and VR and AR banking. With high-resolution streaming on 5G networks, video consultations with your financial representatives via video calls will become the norm. 5G evolution will change the privacy and security aspect with real-time fraud detection and fixing of security lapses across apps and websites without any downtime for the customer. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on service marketing environment. These are the list of sources and links referred to for our content in the video. Thank you and stay tuned for more videos. Let's start with the difference between goods and services. First, goods are defined as those which can be physically experienced, verified, and treated or exchanged. On the other hand, services are activities, deeds, and performance which are available to customers. Next, goods are tangible in nature, as in they can be touched, seen, felt, heard, or smelt. Services, on the other hand, are intangible in nature. They cannot be touched, seen, tasted, felt, heard, or smelt. Goods are homogeneous in nature. They are produced by a company and are consistent in quality in one batch of production. Services are heterogeneous in nature. No two services are alike, as services are delivered by the people whose performance differs. Production and distribution are separated from consumption in case of goods. Goods are first produced and then sold and consumed, as in iPhone is first manufactured, then it is sold to the customer, and then the customer will unbox it and use it. On the other hand, production, distribution, and consumption are done simultaneously in case of services. Next, goods can be stored in inventory or it can be resold another day. Services, on the other hand, cannot be saved, stored, resold, or returned due to its perishability. As in, if there's a flight which can take about 200 passengers, as only 100 passengers filled in before the time of the flight will take off and the remaining 100 seats will go unsold. They cannot be saved for a later flight or a later day. Consumers do not participate in the production process in case of goods. But in services, consumers must participate in the production process since production and consumption is done simultaneously. In case of a flight taking off is a production process. And at the same time, passengers, as in customers, are present in the flight and consuming that service. Next, in case of goods, there is transfer of ownership from the seller to the buyer. But in case of services, there is no transfer of ownership. No matter how expensive the restaurant is, at the end of it, you finish your meal and move out from there. There is no tangible goods that are given to you when you leave from there. In case of goods, consumers can compare choices by examining them side by side. But services, on the other hand, cannot be compared by experiencing simultaneously. As in, you can keep a Samsung Note phone next to an iPhone and compare both of them. But in case of services, if you're comparing two restaurants, what you need to do is go to these restaurants individually and then in the end compare them. But it cannot be done simultaneously in case of services. And finally, in case of goods, the marketing mix consists of 4 P's. That is the product, price, place, and promotion. In case of services, there are 7 P's. Product, price, place, promotion, physical evidence where the service is delivered, the people, as in the employees who deliver the service, and the process in the end. Now let's move on to another topic of goods services continuum. Goods and services continuum means goods and services offerings are being intermingled in an unprecedented manner in different proportions. What a consumer gets today is basically a mix of goods and services. There can be pure services, but there's almost nothing like a pure product today. Almost all goods or products are accompanied by some services. Increasing market competition and the entry of new players in the market for similar manufactured products has resulted in intermingling of goods and services to a great extent. The dividing line between goods and services is rapidly getting blurred, as businesses are discovering that marketing of goods is becoming increasingly dependent on services offered. When more and more similar goods produced, it is the services offered that have become the main distinguishing factor. Now there are 5 broad categories under the goods services continuum. Number 1, pure tangible goods. Some companies offer only tangible goods but do not offer any services tied with the goods. For example, toothpaste or packed salt. These goods are purchased by the customers based purely on the direct benefits received from their consumption. For example, most people do not expect any service to accompany a toothpaste or body wash, etc. Next, major goods with minor services. In case of technology-dependent goods in which customers need accompanying services such as trial, delivery, and installation, operation, training, warranty, and after-sales service are crucial. Such goods include all consumer durables such as the washing machine, refrigerator, water purifier, etc., passenger cars, computers, and similar products. For example, an electronic appliance company offers an installation service for its domestic water purifier. Here, the installation technician will train the customer in its use, water pressure requirement, etc., and help carry out the minor plumbing. Next, goods and services in nearly equal measure. The goods that are accompanied equal measure by service make it a memorable experience for the customer. Now, people have different reasons for choosing a bar or a restaurant. For some, it is the quality of food or cocktails, while others like a place for its atmosphere or the service. Thus, the goods in this case are the menu card, food and drinks, which are accompanied in equal measure by a service, which includes ambience, music, decor, atmosphere, hospitality, and efficient service, together making it a memorable experience. Number 4. Services accompanied by minor goods. Most of the customers select an airline based on comfort and speed. While the journey would essentially be an intangible service, it will be accompanied by some minor goods. In this case, they include food and drinks served on the aircraft, physical evidence of a service such as ticket, boarding pass, or a complimentary in-flight magazine. These are small but tangible goods. But the major reason for selecting an airline is for its service. That's the reason this is service accompanied by minor goods. And finally, pure service not accompanied by goods. Some companies and firms provide services that may not have any accompanying goods. For example, a consultation visit to the psychiatrist or physiotherapist. Now, these rarely entail any accompanying tangible products. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic of major differences between services and goods. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Let's start with what is consumer behavior. According to C.G. Walter and G.W. Paul, consumer behavior is a process whereby individuals decide whether they want, when, where, how and from whom to purchase goods and services. In other words, it is a branch which deals with the various stages a consumer goes through before purchasing products or services for his or her end use. It is an effort to study and understand the buying tendencies and spending patterns of consumers. Not all individuals would prefer to buy similar services. And next, understanding consumer behavior via Netflix. Netflix is working on password sharing behavior. In March 2022, as part of its new password sharing policy, Netflix, in an experiment to test consumer behavior, requested customers to pay extra when sharing their account passwords outside their homes. Netflix announced a new password sharing policy in 3 markets in Latin America: Peru, Chile, and Costa Rica. The rationale behind the move in these countries stems from the fact that these countries represent Netflix's lowest revenue per user, making them more susceptible to changes in pricing. The ultimate goal is to extrapolate the findings in these 3 small markets to larger markets globally. And the final example, as in how did Netflix nail the art of binge watching? Ever wondered how can you watch an entire series on Netflix at one go and not get bored? There is something about Netflix that attracts viewers to binge watch number of shows time and again. The whole rationale lies in the suspense quotient. Netflix feeds the what next anticipation with spot-on recommendations. Netflix uses a sophisticated artificial intelligence algorithm, and the autoplay features move straight to the next episode. Netflix has thus understood the consumer behavior ballgame, and with the aid of technology, it will just get better. Moving on to the factors influencing consumer behavior. Let's start with the first one, social factors. Human beings are like social animals. We need people around to talk to and discuss various issues to reach to better solutions and ideas. We all live in a society, and it is important for individuals to adhere to laws and regulations of a society. Social factors play an essential role in influencing the buying decision of consumers. Now, social factors influence consumer decisions based on the following. First, family influence. The family is a major influence on consumer behavior. Family consumer behavior, to a large extent, depends on the family life cycle. The knowledge about stages in family life cycles such as bachelorhood, newly married, parenthood help greatly in knowing the buying process. Next, reference groups. Every individual has some people around who influence him or her in any way. Co-workers, family members, relatives, neighbors, friends, seniors at workplace often form reference groups. Such reference groups have a great influence on an individual's response, cognition, and behavior. It influences a person's thoughts and actions. Next, role in the society. Everyone plays the dual role in the society depending on the group they belong to. An individual working as a chief executive officer with a reputed firm is also someone's husband and father at home. The buying tendency of individuals depend on the role he plays in the society. Next, social status. An individual from an upper middle class would spend on luxurious items, whereas an individual from the middle to lower income group buy items required for his or her survival. Moving on to factors influencing consumer behavior, in this case, personal factors. First, occupation. The occupation of an individual plays a significant role in influencing his or her buying decision. An individual's nature of job has a direct influence on the products and brand he or she buys. Next, age. Age and human life cycle also influence the buying behavior of consumers. Teenagers would be more interested in buying bright and loud colors as compared to middle-aged elderly individuals who prefer decent and subtle designs. Next, economic condition. The buying tendency of an individual is directly proportional to his income or earnings per month. How much an individual brings home decide on how much he spends and on which products and services. Next, lifestyle. Lifestyle refers to the way some individuals stay in the society. An individual's lifestyle is something to do with his style, attitude, perception, his social relations, and immediate surroundings. Next, psychological factors. First, perception. Perception is the process by which buyers select, organize, and interpret information into a meaningful impression in their mind. Buyer's perception of a service greatly influences the buying behavior. For example, if the buyer's perception of service is not positive, it may require more efforts from the marketing or salesperson to convince the buyer on the qualities of the service. Next, motivation. Motivation is a driving force within individuals that compels them to take some action. Such a driving force is subconscious and the outcome of a certain unfilled needs. Needs can be of two types. The innate needs, which an individual is born and they are mainly psychological. And secondly, needs can be acquired. Needs that a person acquires as he or she grows are love, fear, esteem, acceptance, etc. Next, learning. Learning comes only through experience. An individual comes to know about a service only after he or she uses the same. An individual who is satisfied with a product or service will show a strong inclination towards buying the same service or product again. And finally, beliefs and attitude. Beliefs and attitude play an essential role in influencing the buying decision of consumers. Individuals create a certain image of every product or service available in the market. Every brand has an image attached to it, also called its brand image. Consumers purchase products or services based on their opinions which they form towards a product or service. And finally, cultural factors. Cultural factors entail the following. First, culture. Culture comprises of a set of values and ideologies of a community or group of individuals. It is the culture of an individual which decides the way he or she behaves. In simpler words, culture is nothing but values of an individual. Moving on to the subculture. Within the culture, there are segments that share distinguishing meanings, values, and patterns of behavior that differ from those of overall culture. The members of subculture share certain values and attitude with one another. And finally, social class. Another important dimension of culture is social class. These are relatively homogeneous and follow our hierarchical order, such as upper class, middle class, and lower class. Now moving on to the types of buying behavior. There are mainly four types. First, complex buying behavior. Second, dissonance-reducing buyer behavior. Habitual buying behavior. And finally, variety-seeking buyer behavior. Let's look at each one of them briefly. Complex buying behavior. Consumers go through complex buying behavior when they are highly involved in a purchase and are aware of significant differences existing among brands. Complex buying behavior involves a three-step process. First, the buyer develops beliefs about the product. Second, he or she develops attitudes about the product. And third, he or she makes a thoughtful choice. Example in this case would be graduate students looking for a postgraduate MBA college. Next in line is the dissonance-reducing buying behavior. Sometimes the consumer is highly involved in a purchase but sees little difference in brands. The purchase is expensive, infrequent and risky, therefore the consumer is highly involved. In this case, the buyer will go around to learn what is available but will buy when he gets a good price. After the purchase, the consumer might experience dissonance as in disagreement that stems as in comes from noticing certain odd features or hearing favorable things about other brands. For example, a customer booking a flight ticket to a foreign destination for a long holiday. Next, habitual buying behavior. There are many products and services which are bought under conditions of low involvement and the absence of significant brand differences. In case of a product, take a simple example of salt. Consumers have little involvement in this product category. They go to the shop and reach for the brand. If they keep reaching for the same brand, it is out of habit, not strong brand loyalty. It is evident that consumers have low involvement with most low-cost, frequently purchased products and services. The reputation of ads create brand familiarity rather than brand conviction. As far as services is concerned, the best example is customers behave like this when selecting a movie hall for the latest movie released. And the final behavior, variety-seeking buyer behavior. Some situations are characterized by low consumer involvement but significant brand differences. Here markets are flooded with brands and consumers often do a lot of brand switching. Brand switching occurs for the sake of variety rather than dissatisfaction. Best example in this case, couple trying out new restaurants every week. That doesn't mean they are dissatisfied with the current one that they go to. They just want to engage in the aspect of variety seeking. So that's it folks. This brings an end to the topic on understanding consumer behavior and services. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Let's start with the variations in customer involvement. Customer involvement is a state of mind that motivates consumers to identify with the product service offering, their consumption patterns and consumption behavior. According to Schiffman, consumer involvement is a heightened state of awareness that motivates consumers to seek out, attend to, and think about product or service information prior to purchase. Customer involvement is important in services, as in some cases, customers are part of the production process. The characteristic of inseparability plays a major role in this scenario. Thus, customers need to be trained and educated on the finer nuances of service delivery and consumption. Now moving on to the types of customer involvement. First, situational involvement. This is a state of arousal directed towards attaching for a very short term. As an effective state, it creates a level of involvement when a person thinks about a person or an object or a situation. It is specific to a situation and is thus temporary in nature. It could vary from low to high depending upon the situational factors. For instance, the involvement in selecting a restaurant for the weekend dinner. The other involvement is enduring involvement. When the level of involvement towards a product or service category extends over a period across situations, it is referred to as enduring involvement. The person shows a high level of interest in the product service category and spends time collecting and processing information and integrating it with his or her memory. For example, selecting a college for postgraduate studies would entail an enduring involvement that could be on behalf of the student or his parents. Please note, enduring involvement finally gives birth to an opinion leader. Enduring involvement with a product or service category often gives birth to an opinion leader. An opinion leader is a person who holds interest in a product or service category and becomes a specialist. He or she makes effort to gather all information about the category, the brand offering, etc., and talks about and spreads the information and knowledge that they possess. When a person wants to make a purchase, he or she seeks the advice and guidance of such an opinion leader who helps them decide. Finally, opinion leaders are product or service specific. Now moving on to the levels of customer contact. First, high contact services. In case of high contact services, customers visit the service facility personally and are actively involved with the service organization and its personnel throughout the service delivery. Customers go to the service site and remain there until the service is completed. For instance, college, hospital, cinema hall, gym, and airlines. That is, the customers stay from the start of the service production to the service delivery inside the service location. Next, medium contact services. Medium contact services involve a lower degree of involvement with the service providers. In this group are services in which the customer visits the service provider's facilities but either do not remain there throughout the service delivery or else have little contact with the service personnel. The purpose of such contact is often limited to establishing a relationship, defining the problem of the service, dropping off and picking up a physical possession that is being serviced, or simply paying the bill. The best example in this case would be the drive-thrus at Starbucks and McDonald's, where customers just go to pick up the order and drive away. And finally, low contact services. These involve no physical contact between the customer and the service provider. Instead, contact takes place through the medium of electronic or physical distribution channel. The best example in this case could be all the mobile apps used in the service sector, especially the feature of mobile banking. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on customer involvement in services. These are a list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. A service product is a bundle of features and customer benefits. A customer has various needs attached to a service product. To understand a service product, it is necessary to understand different levels of product within a service. According to Philip Kotler, a marketer needs to think through 5 levels of service product. The 5 levels of product constitute a customer value hierarchy. Let's take a quick stab at product levels in services. The first is the core product. This refers to the basic product. Here, the focus is on the purpose for which the product is intended. Then comes the generic product. This represents all the qualities of the product. Third is the expected product. This refers to all the benefits customer expects to get when they purchase a product. Fourth, augmented product. This refers to all the additional factors which set the product apart from competition, that is, its brand identity and image. And finally comes the potential product. This refers to the augmentations and transformations that the product may undergo in the future. Now let's apply an example of a 5-star hotel to the product levels. In case of a 5-star hotel, the core product would be rest and sleep. The basic product would be the hotel room, bed, bathroom, towels, desk and closet. The expected product would be clean beds, fresh towels, working lamps and the relative degree of quietness. The augmentation benefits, as in what sets a hotel apart from the other hotels, would be the supplied food that suit customers' health, maybe a tablet-based control room or voice-activate control features. The potential products in the hospitality segment now are smart mirrors, keyless entry, and maybe underwater hotels. Moving on to new service development stages. The first, idea generation. The ideas can be generated through internal sources like sales staff, frontline employees, and market research department, and external sources like customers, experts in the field, market information system, and trade journals, seminars, and conferences. The next is idea screening. In this stage, those ideas are identified that are promising and have potential to be successful. The evaluation committee screens various service ideas rigorously in order to ensure that the ideas are consistent with the company's mission, image, and capability. Moving on to stage 3 is the stage of concept testing. Concept testing involves translating the service idea into service concept with specific need-satisfying aspects. Testing is done through presenting the idea to a consumer panel with the help of a brochure, literature, and other visual presentation to test the reactions of the group. Fourth is the business analysis. At this stage, the financial and marketing feasibility is carried out to find the practicality of the project. The firm will proceed to develop the new service only if the information on the above aspect is complete and viable. Number 5. Service development. The business proposal must then be converted into the actual service that will be delivered to the customer. All tangible elements and service delivery process must be designed. Number 6. Market testing. Market testing helps the service firm to remix the marketing mix elements in order to reduce the risk of launch. And finally, the stage of launch. The final stage of the new service development process is launching the service. The life cycle of the service begins, and the new service will now start earning revenue for the firm. Moving on to some examples under product, first one being luxury travel. Luxury tour operator witnesses increased demand for around-the-world journeys by private jet. Luxury tour operator Abercrombie & Kent is witnessing growing demand for its around-the-world journeys by private jet. 24-day journey starts at a ballpark $154,000 per person in double occupancy. As stated by the senior vice president, since the return to travel, we have seen an increase in demand for longer, more immersive trips, especially our private jet journeys, which were the first and fastest to fill. The journey here has space for 48 guests who will discover some of the world's most fascinating places alongside experts for the deep understanding of the cultures. The itinerary concludes on May 29, 2023, which begins in Seattle and includes Kyoto, Japan, Kathmandu, Mount Everest, Paro in Bhutan, Agra in India, Abu Dhabi, Petra and Wadi Rum in Jordan, Tormin Silsi, and Boston. The next example under product is of luxury hotel, the Oberoi Hotel in Mumbai. The Oberoi in Mumbai Hotel has a marble flooring procured from the Greek island of Thassos. Post the renovation in 2010 due to a terrorist attack, the check-in counter was removed and Tiffin, the restaurant, was renamed Phoenix, a reference to the mythological phoenix who rose from the ashes. Kandahar, the restaurant serving Northwest frontier cuisine, was changed to Zia, which was Chef Vineet Bhatia's version of modern Indian cuisine. And finally, the 300 rooms were reduced to 287, with the Kohinoor suite the most expensive at Rs 3 lakh, which is about $4,000 per night. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on service product. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Now, price is a significant element of the marketing mix because it is the only element that produces revenue, whereas the other elements produce cost. Price reflects the value attached to the service by the service provider, and it must correspond with customers' perception of value. Service providers offer a range of service at different price levels to cater to the needs of different target segments that may have different levels of purchasing power. Now, prices have different names and services. For instance, in the field of insurance, they are called premium. For banks, it is interest. In terms of transport, fares, credit card fees, and when it comes to share or stock services, we talk about brokerage. Now, moving on to the methods of pricing. First, cost-based pricing. It is also called as a cost-plus pricing. Under this method, the company determines the cost of service delivery as well as a predetermined rate of profit in order to arrive at a price. It is necessary to analyze all costs accurately and differentiate between fixed and variable cost in order to use cost as a basis for pricing decisions. In the service industries, it is complicated to identify and trace the cost to the particular offering. Moving on to the next one, demand-based pricing. Demand-based pricing is generally used where the services are price sensitive. The service providers tend to increase the price of service offering when demand is high, whereas tend to lower the price of the service offering when the demand is low. Moving on to the third method of pricing, that is competition-based pricing. In this method of pricing, the price is determined on the basis of competitors' price. This strategy works well between Burger King and McDonald's. Price under such situations may be used to gain short-term competitive advantage over rivals. Companies here have three main choices under this approach. First, pricing above the competition. Next, below the competition. And finally, at par with competition. Now moving on, an example of pricing in services. In this case, Uber's dynamic pricing. Many times people notice cab fares to be on the higher side compared to normal rates on a weekend night. Such a pricing strategy is recognized as surge pricing or dynamic pricing. Companies such as Uber make use of normal peak hours, bad weather conditions such as rain, events, maybe concerts or movie premieres, traffic conditions, unseen emergencies, and so on in their favor. In this case, systematic algorithms fuel the technique due to which businesses such as Uber cater to the demand-supply asymmetry, or I would say demand-supply mismatch. Now moving on to the pricing strategies, in this case we have 7 of them that cater to specifically to the service industry. The first one, skimming strategy. In this, the services are introduced at a high price. It is assumed that customers are more concerned about obtaining a quality service rather than the cost of the service. As the demand for the service falls, the price level is reduced. Next one, penetration pricing. In this, new services are priced low. The prices are kept to stimulate trial and thereby ensure customer loyalty. Low pricing is possible when the services are sensitive to price, and it is possible to achieve economies of large-scale operations by operating at larger volumes. This works best in case of low-fare airlines, and the example in this case could be of Southwest Airlines. Next, market segmentation pricing. The pricing strategy adopted to successfully cater to these groups is known as discriminatory pricing on the basis of market segmentation. Now that may be done on the following basis. First, different time of consumption. Example, travel and the hospitality tariffs are low during off-season and high during peak season, especially Christmas. Next, different point of consumption. Therefore, higher prices in the cities, then suburbs. And finally, group of buyers. Example, in this case could be of children below 10 years of age charged less in amusement parks such as Disneyland. Moving on to the fourth pricing, that is the service mix pricing, and it entails 3 subtypes. The first being competing services. The service provider may offer a new service similar to the existing one but at a low price. The service firm competes with its own offerings. For example, an airline that offers a connecting flight in a particular route may offer a direct flight in the same route at a lesser price. Next, captive service. In this strategy, the customer has no choice but to get additional service from the service provider along with the core service. In this case, software developing firms who are given annual maintenance contract offer free upgrades of software to their clients. And finally, optional additional services. In this, the service provider gives an option to the customer to purchase the optional service along with the core service. Please remember the key word here is optional. The customer is not bound to take it. Example, many holiday resorts located at hill stations keep their room tariffs low to attract tourists, but they charge more on optional services like restaurant and spa. Moving on to the fifth pricing strategy, that is price bundling. Price bundling is a strategy whereby a seller bundles together many different goods or services being sold and offers the entire bundle at a single price. The best example in this case is of McDonald's Happy Meal. Number 6, discount pricing. It is used as a promotional device to encourage use during low demand time slots or to encourage customers to try a new service, such as introductory discount, usually offered by fitness gyms. At number 7 is relationship pricing. The main objective of this type of pricing is to encourage customer loyalty by rewarding it. Thus, relationship pricing takes the lifetime value of customer into account while deciding the prices. This works wonderfully for Starbucks in their loyalty program. And finally, at number 8 is competitors pricing. In this method of pricing, the price determined on the basis of competitors. Price under such situations may be used to gain short-term competitive advantage of rivals. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic in pricing of services. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. One of the key elements of the marketing mix is promotion, which is used for the purpose of encouraging sales and conveys to the customer the position of the service. Promotion enables service firms to connect their brands to different people, places, events, brands, experience, feelings, and things. Moving on to some guidelines for service communication. First, provide clues to tangibilize the service offer. Though services are intangible, they still have tangible components. The customers generally use these as substitute to evaluate various service alternatives. The tangible clues reduce the risk and eliminate the uncertainties associated with a service not known to a customer. Next, make the service easy to understand. Due to the intangible nature of the services, it is generally difficult to comprehend with what exactly constitutes the offer of a service firm. The service provider has to use tangible evidence so that the prospective customer may comprehend the offer in a better way. The best example in this case would be of Starbucks and their famous white cup. Number 3. Promising what is possible. Service may be difficult to grasp mentally because of their intangibility. Tangible attributes of the service can be used to help better understand the service offered. Example, credit cards. Service firms should deliver on their promises. If a promise such as a fast delivery cannot be consistently met, it should not be made at all. This works beautifully in case of pizza chains. Next, use word-of-mouth publicity. In professional services like doctors, lawyers, teachers, hairdressers, schools, colleges, etc., word-of-mouth publicity that have already experienced service holds weightage in attracting prospective customers. Number 5. Maintain communications continuity. It is imperative to maintain continuity in communication for achieving differentiation and to portray a unifying and consistent theme over a period of time. Continuous advertising and publicity will enable the customer to get strongly attached to the theme. In this case, Instagram works wonders for the brand. Moving on to the various tools used in service promotion. Now, these are similar to general promotional tools, and they include, first, advertising, sales promotion, personal selling, word-of-mouth communication, public relation and publicity, sponsorship, and direct marketing. Let's take a quick stab at each one of them briefly, starting with advertising. Advertising is a paid form of non-personal presentation and promotion of ideas, goods, or services by an identified sponsor, as in you can identify who's advertising the service. Relevant and consistent advertising is of great importance in service marketing because advertising can build awareness of the service that may add to the customer's knowledge of the service. It can also be used to help persuade the customers to buy and differentiate the service from other service offerings. In service, the core product is intangible and therefore it is difficult to promote services. Moving on, advertising has a major role in helping deliver the desired positioning for the service. Therefore, service marketeers frequently choose tangible elements within the product for promotion. We therefore find most of the airlines promote the quality of the cuisine, the width and pitch of their seats, and the quality of their in-flight services, which are certain tangible elements. In the recent times, advertising of financial services, telecommunication services, and retailing has grown dramatically. There are a number of advantages of using advertising. First, effective communication to the target audience. Next, cost effectiveness. Third, mass communication. Next, support other elements of marketing mix and build a strong brand image. Now, in case and services, there are 7 P's. And finally, create awareness and stimulate demand. Moving on to the next tool in service promotion is sales promotion. Sales promotion is an activity intended to stimulate purchases by adding an incentive to the inherent feature of the product or service offered, inherent as in inbuilt. A number of activities can be undertaken which aim at providing incentives to encourage sales. Next, personal selling works wonders in the banking and the insurance segment. Personal selling means personally persuading or aiding a prospective customer in purchasing a product or service or accepting or acting on an idea. Personal selling is a powerful two-way form of communication that allows an interactive relation to be developed between the buyer and the seller. Moving on to the fourth one, word-of-mouth communication. This works brilliantly in the era of social media. In service marketing, while promoting the services, greater importance is given to referral and word-of-mouth communication. Uber in the initial days used word-of-mouth to their advantage. Customers are often closely involved in the delivery of a service and they talk to other potential customers and share their experiences. Where people are the deliverers of services, personal recommendation is offered the preferred source of information in the service industry. Next, public relation and publicity. PR can be defined as the planned and sustained effort to establish and maintain goodwill between an organization and its public. These public are all groups of people and organizations which have an interest in the service company. Moving on to number 6, sponsorship. Sponsorship involves investments in events or causes so that an organization can enhance its reputation. One important advantage of sponsoring is that it allows a company to avoid the general media clutter that you face typically in advertising. And number 7, direct marketing. Direct marketing entails the following: telemarketing, direct mail, trade show participation, articles, speeches, presentation or white papers, news and press releases, and finally customer newsletters. Now moving on to certain examples of service promotion. In this case, we look at the example of Google. Google in 2014 became the first organization to rent out the world's biggest and most costly digital billboard in Times Square, New York. 8 stories in height and estimated to cost around $2.5 million, Google had the spot for 4 weeks. The size of the screen is roughly around the size of a football field. Approximately 300,000 pedestrians are estimated to walk past the billboard each day. Example of Kentucky Fried Chicken. KFC, one of the most beloved fast food chains globally, ran out of chicken. This event was marked as a tremendous disaster for the brand that developed the entire empire on its star product, chicken. In order to combat this mishap, the brand had to shut nearly 1,000 outlets based in the US momentarily. However, learning this opportunity, their advertising agency played with the popular KFC acronym and created a print ad that says FCK. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on promotion of services. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. How do you distribute services? Distribution is a process of transferring goods from the place of production to the place of consumption. In case of tangible goods, the distribution system involves the use of a network of intermediaries for distribution. In some cases, the goods are distributed directly. Now, in the case of services, they are inseparable from the service provider and can neither be stored nor transported, nor is their ownership or title passed along the channel line. Due to their peculiar characteristics of services, the placing of services should not be treated in the same line as that of tangible products. Moving on, there are certain services where the service provider has to be present personally in order to deliver the services according to their specifications. For example, Starbucks. On the other hand, there are certain services which do not require this presence of a service provider. Example, ATM. In services, distribution means provision of personal services and information to the customer which adds value to the service. Services must be available at the right time and at the right place, and it should be accessible with care and convenience by which the customer can avail the services. Moving on to the location of service premises, as in the choice of location. The place of service delivery is very important. The decision regarding location is very much concerned with the selection of site from where the delivery of service takes place. The accessibility and availability form an important base for location of service premises. Accessibility refers to the convenience with which a service can be purchased, used, or received. Availability refers to the extent to which a service is obtainable or capable of being purchased, used, or received. Moving on, let's look at the factors that are important while selecting a service location. Number 1, the nature of service. Services are perishable and inseparable from the service provider. In such a case, there is less flexibility and more cost involved in setting the location. For instance, in case of restaurant and banks, the location must be convenient to the customer as the customer has to go to the service provider. Next, nature of interaction. The nature of interaction may differ from services to services. The question here is where the service is to be delivered, whether at the place of service provider or at the place of the customer. Next, customer needs and wants. According to a market segment, the customer wants and needs may differ. There are customers who may rate convenience as a major criteria for service, while some others may want some special feature of the service and are willing to go to any location. Next, natural geographical location. There are certain services that do not have a choice of location. In case of holidays in the hill station or on beach, they are dependent on geographical locations rather than the convenience factor of both the customer and the firm. In these cases, these locations are predetermined and therefore the service provider must try and manage other elements of marketing in order to attract the customer. Next, technological advancement. Automation has advanced to such an extent that there is a great reduction in the choice of location decisions. In case of banking services, with the introduction of the ATMs, it is possible to separate the service provider from the customer. Next, dependency on other services. There are certain services like medical services, example X-ray, diagnostic laboratories and pharmacies, that are dependent on each other and therefore they are required in clusters of associated services and products. Next, infrastructure facilities. There are certain services which require rapid communication facilities with the other companies, example financial services. They are to be located in large and highly developed cities with excellent communication. And finally, target market decisions. The location must be closer to the largest customer, taking into consideration the infrastructure facilities available to access to the location. It should be easier for the target market to reach the service outlet. Next, intermediaries for service distribution, in this case, the choice of channel. A service distribution channel refers to the sequence of intermediaries or middlemen involved in moving the service from the producer to the customer. The popularly used channels of distribution are, first, franchisees. Franchisees are service outlets licensed by a principal to deliver a unique service concept it has created or popularized. For example, McDonald's uses a lot of franchises all over the world. Next are agents and brokers. Agents and brokers are representatives who distribute and sell the service of one or more service suppliers. And finally, the one that is famous of all are the electronic channels. Electronic channel includes forms of service provision through television, telephone, interactive media, and computer. Many financial and information services are currently distributed to electronic media such as banking, bill payment, education, etc. Now moving on to some examples of place. The first one being Marriott International, set to launch luxurious Ritz-Carlton Reserve brand of Saudi Arabia. Marriott International has signed an agreement with the Red Sea Development Company to launch its luxurious Ritz-Carlton Reserve brand off the west coast of Saudi Arabia. Set to debut in 2023 as Najuma, a Ritz-Carlton Reserve is expected to be part of the highly anticipated Red Sea destination. Najuma will be located on a set of private islands which are part of the Red Sea's Blue Hole cluster of islands. Surrounded by natural beauty and designed to mix with the environment, the resort will feature 63 1 to 4 bedroom water and beach villas. Next, Singapore Airlines increases services to Australian cities. Singapore Airlines will increase its operation to 4 times to key Australian cities. This will entail daily flights to Melbourne, while the frequency of Darwin and Cairns will increase to 5 times weekly. In line with the increase in operations, Singapore Airlines has invested around 230 million Singapore dollars in the development, design and installation of new cabin products. Ultimately, the growth in services to Australian destinations can be attributed to the region's peak period, which will ultimately support the recovery efforts of local tourism in the country. And the final example of Domino's India, which reduced the delivery time from 30 minutes to 20 minutes. Domino's Pizza in India has reduced the delivery time for 60% of its online orders to 20 minutes. Jubilean Foodworks owns the exclusive master franchise rights of the international pizza chain in India. The rationale behind the shorter delivery time was to improve customer service and leveraging the opening of new outlets closer to consumer homes. The pizza chain has put into place a fortressing strategy which entails aggressively expanding its store count in existing markets to lower delivery times further. Jubilean currently operates about 1,500 Domino's stores in India, and the plan is to take it to up to 3,000 stores. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on how to distribute services. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Let's start with people as in employees and the introduction. In services, people refers to all human actors who play a part in the service delivery process. Service can be labor intensive, that is people based or equipment based. In equipment-based services, the equipment or machine is critical in providing the service, whereas labor plays a secondary role. The equipment may be automatic or manually operated. Many service industries are labor-intensive, where human element is primary to service creation and delivery tools are secondary. Now let's look at the type of employees. First, customer contact employees. They are known as frontline staff as they come in direct contact with the customers in the process of service delivery. Example, front office staff, waiters, air hostesses, etc. These contact employees are very important because they represent the organization and can directly influence the customer satisfaction. Next, non-contact employees. Those employees who contribute to the service delivery but do not come in contact with the customers are called non-contact employees. Such employees include the administrative staff, the chefs in the hotel, etc. They might possess high technical skill and are competent in their work. Moving on to how do you manage people as an employee in services, certain industry examples. Let's start with the first one, in this case, Disneyland's Aspire Education Program. Disneyland plans to partner with California State University, Fullerton and Fullerton College to offer free in-person education to Disneyland hourly employees. Through the $150 million Disney Aspire campaign, Disneyland employees get free college education which were earlier restricted to online classes. Disneyland currently has 4,000 employees enrolled in the Aspire program. The Aspire program covers the cost of 200 college degrees at the associate, bachelor's and master's level, including 100% of tuition, fees and books at network schools for full-time and part-time hourly employees. Next example is of Singapore Airlines, which plans to hire about 2,000 cabin crews. Singapore Airlines plans to hire 2,000 cabin crews by March 2023. Singapore Airlines has already hired more than 800 cabin crews. It is important to note that about 3 in 5 of these were former cabin crew members who had left the job due to the pandemic. During the pandemic, which is around September 2020, Singapore Airlines had slashed 4,300 positions across its airlines. Moving on to the next example of Starbucks investing in employee experience. Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz announced a series of investments in the company totaling about $1 billion to enhance employee experience, health and pay. Schultz added, "We will introduce joy and connection back into the partner experience." The partners in this case are the employees. Since his return as CEO earlier this year, Schultz has been visiting retail and roasting plant partners around the country to understand how their lives have been impacted over the last 2 years. The next example of Starbucks Coffee Masters. The expert coffee makers with certain years of experience at Starbucks are called Coffee Masters. They are the ones that wear the black aprons. According to Starbucks stories, there are over 5,000 active coffee masters in Starbucks stores worldwide. The process to become a coffee master is a rigorous one, which starts during any new employee's initial training. There are ultimately 3 different stages of Coffee Academy baristas when they need to pass to become a Starbucks coffee master. Now moving on to some generic strategies for managing people in your organization. First, hire the right people. The first step towards developing service-conscious employees is to recruit and select the right people to deliver the service. Recruiting and selecting the right employees have always been a challenge for managers. Next, develop people to deliver quality services. Once the organization has selected and recruited the right staff, the service organization can develop people to deliver quality service. Through adequate training, empowering the staff to be responsive to customers' need, and promoting teamwork to support the service delivery process. Next, or number 3, providing the support system. The employees require adequate support in delivering the customer promise. The support must be from co-workers, supervisors, and management. And finally, retain the best employee. It is not sufficient for the service firm to just hire, train, and develop employees to deliver quality service. They must also strive to retain the best employee in the business. In order to achieve this, the service firm must treat employees as customers and also include them in the company's vision. Moving on to a concept of boundary spanning. Frontline employees of service firms are referred as boundary spanners as they operate at the boundary of the organization. Frontline employees link the inside of an organization to the outside world. Teachers are considered boundary spanners in a school. Staff at the reception of a hotel are also termed as boundary spanners. They understand, filter, and interpret information and resources to meet operational and marketing goals. Because of the position they occupy, boundary spanners often have conflicting roles. The next and the final concept in this chapter is of emotional labor. Employees, especially service employees, experience conflict and stress, but are expected to have a pleasant disposition towards the customer. This is called emotional labor. It goes beyond the physical or mental skills needed to deliver the quality service. It often requires to suppress their true feelings to deliver the service. It arises from the discrepancy between the way frontline staff feel inside and the emotions they're expected to portray in front of the customers. A doctor is always expected to be warm and helpful to all his patients, even if he or she has experienced failure in operation theatre or maybe some personal problem at home. Next, an air hostess is always expected to greet all passengers with a smile and maintain the smiling personality for 8 to 9 hours a day, irrespective of her emotional state of mind. Finally, concluding this with an example of Disney Park. In Disney Park, the job of a mascot requires to be friendly and cheerful the whole day. On a given day, the employee is not up to his or her usual self. Disney Park allows another employee to fill in for the day. The company realizes that a job of a mascot entails an employee to be at his or her friendly best all the time, which can be quite difficult on certain days when the employee has some personal problems. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on people in services. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Generally, a service transaction involves the interaction of the service provider with the customer in a service environment. Physical evidence is termed as the social environment along with the tangible cues where the service provider and the customer interact. Ziyatmal and Bittner define physical evidence as the environment in which the service is delivered and where the firm and customer interact, and any tangible commodities help in performance of the service. Moving on to some examples of physical evidence. First, in the case of hotels, physical evidence of a hotel room includes a well-furnished room, warm decor, good room amenities, clean linens, etc. Additionally, it also includes smart TV, hot water kettle, mini bar and refreshments, bath gels and shampoo kits in the bathroom, and many others. In case of a fast food joint, the ambience is usually vibrant and colorful with a casual setup and peppy music to appeal to the youth. The digital menu boards, tables, chairs, peppy music, trays, dustbins, etc. fall under the gamut of physical evidence of a fast food joint. Moving on to hospitals. Physical evidence of a hospital room typically includes sanitized ambient conditions, clean linens, sober colored furnishings, etc. Additionally, it also includes the uniform of doctors and nurses, medical equipment and devices. In case of a college, it includes a Wi-Fi enabled large campus, classrooms and an updated library. Inside a classroom, an apt environment includes clean floors, brightness of the rooms, proper ventilation, wide whiteboards and good audiovisual support. Moving on to the industry of banking. A bank's physical evidence involves well-defined counters for each type of banking service. Additionally, it also includes spacious seating area for customers while they await their turn and technologically advanced computer systems. And finally, in the case of airlines. In case of an airline, the physical evidence includes the aircraft's exterior and interior, more specifically interiors as passengers spend the maximum time there. Cabin interiors, lighting, temperature, well-dressed cabin crew, comfortable reclining seats, and in-flight entertainment constitute the major part of physical evidence of an airline. Now let's move on to some live examples in the case of physical evidence. The first example on Singapore Airlines A380 First Class. Inside Singapore's A380 First Class suite that features a full bed, private bathroom and large leather armchair. On board the A380 is Singapore Airlines' swanky new First Class suite which features up to 100 square feet of living space. The suite is an upgrade from the original A380 First Class cabin that debuted in 2007. Since then, Singapore has retrofitted its current 380s with the new suite, which was first introduced in 2017. Here is a large leather reclining armchair. Moving on to the next example of hotels that serve a special experience after the dark. In this case, examples of the Oberoi Amar Villas in Agra, India. The next is JW Marriott Maldives Resort and Spa in Maldives. Great Plains Conservation, a South African-based conservation organization, and the Nautilus in Maldives. Now moving on to understanding physical evidence better. Physical evidence includes two areas. They are servicescape and tangibles. Let's look at each one of them briefly, starting with servicescape. Servicescape is further divided into three parts: ambient conditions, space and function, and sign, symbol and artifact. Now let's take a stab at each one of them quickly. First being ambient conditions. Ambient conditions entails the following. First, quality of air. The temperature and quality of air in any service environment plays an important role in customers' moods and temperaments. The quality of air also relates to humidity, dust-free, freshness or naturalness of air. Restaurants have separate smoking zone as to maintain good indoor quality of air. In aircrafts, baths of humid air are pumped into the cabin to maintain pressure levels for flying at high altitudes. Next, sound and music. The sound factor indicates the impact of volume on customer habits and reactions to a particular service. In hospitals, there are dedicated silent zones in ICUs and operation theatres. Music and beats also have psychological effects on customer behavior that eventually adds to the service experience. Some hospitals play soft, soothing music and spiritual chants to foster calmness in the environment and wellness for patients. In the same way, jazz music is continuously played in 5-star restaurants for the experience of fine dining. Moving on to the third element under ambient condition, and that's smell and fragrance. Did you know humans are able to recognize approximately 10,000 odors and more impressively recall smell with 65% accuracy even after a year? The best example in this case is of the Oberoi Hotel in Mumbai, in which diffusers are placed in common areas that set off a particular fragrance by forest essentials. The essence that they use is of a specific Madurai jasmine. Moving on to the fourth element under ambient conditions, color. It relates to the attention and impression a customer would develop at the first instance of the brand while consuming the service. For instance, yellow catches attention sooner than any other color. The school buses are mostly yellow, indicating due caution to other vehicles on road. Play schools, on the other hand, are made more colorful and attractive, making learning rooms alive. Hospitals typically have white interiors as the color relates to purity, calmness, cleanliness, and a sanitized environment. Moving on to the second element under servicescape, space and function. Under space and function, the first sub-element is decor. The concept of decor can be well understood through the example of a restaurant. The decor at various restaurants denote the themes they adopt, as to acquainting customers with their distinct identity and ambience. Chinese restaurants typically have an authentic Chinese decor and music. Most outlets have a familiar decor with at the entrance and a wall of gold jars, rosewood furniture, and subdued designer lighting. Next is the layout. It reflects the spaciousness, ambience, and seating arrangements in which a service is delivered. For instance, some restaurants have a private dining area for larger families so as to avoid inconvenience to other guests. On the other hand, pharmacy and hospitals are strategically located on the ground floor for easy access to patients and their relatives. And the sub-third element under space and function are the facilities exterior. Typically includes the exterior of a service location. Customers form the first impression about the service. For example, lauded as a premium 5-star hotel in Mumbai, the Leela Mumbai is an island of green situated near the international airport. The exterior of the hotel includes 11 acres of ornate gardens and cascading waterfalls. Moving on to the third sub-element under servicescape, signs, symbols and artifacts. Now these are used to educate and train the customer. It also includes certifications from valid authorities to confirm the proficiency and trustworthiness of the service provider. Doctor's degree, non-smoking and seatbelt signs in a flight, instruction to different zones in a hotel, instructions inside a bank, etc. fall under the gamut of signs, symbols and artifacts. Lastly, the concept of a symbol can be explained through Air India's Indian Airlines mascot, the Maharaja. Since Air India has been symbolized by Maharajas since decades, the company has decided to tweak its image to make it more in tune with the changed times. And finally, the other area of physical evidence, tangibles. Tangibles representation of service include brochures, uniform, letterheads, business cards, reports, internet presence, and equipment, etc. Some restaurants have a unique method of using an iPad to take orders. Thus, the iPad is a tangibility factor here. Additionally, insurance policies given by insurance companies, uniforms given by hospitals, etc. fall under the purview of tangibles. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on physical evidence. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Process refers to the procedures, mechanisms, and flow of activities through which a service is delivered. In addition, it involves tasks, schedules, and routines by which a product or service is delivered to the customer. Services are actions performed for or with customers and typically involve a sequence of steps and activities. The combination of these steps constitute a service process which is evaluated by customers. Now let's look at an example of process, in this case the brand MasterCard. MasterCard's Smile to Pay process. MasterCard believes that touchless technology will shorten queues, speed up transaction times, improve hygiene and security in businesses worldwide. The company is pilot testing its new Smile to Pay system in Brazil, with the rationale being saving on time for customers at checkouts. The process entails customers installing an app which will take their picture and the payment information. This information will be eventually stored on the third-party provider's server. At the checkout counter, the customer's face will be matched with the already stored data, and once they find the perfect match, funds will be deducted automatically. Now moving on to how to designing a service process. Well, it is necessary to understand whether the service itself is process-dependent, equipment-based service, or services with highly intangible attributes such as banking, legal, or insurance. And to do that, we have the following pointers. First, customer participation. For most service systems, the customer is present when the service is being performed. Instead of being a passive bystander, the customer represents productive labor just at the moment it is needed. Opportunities exist for increasing productivity by shifting some of the service activities onto the customer. Furthermore, customer participation can increase the degree of customization. Involving the customers in the service process can support a competitive strategy of cost leadership with limited customization if focused on a self-serve customer market. The best example in this case would be customers punching in their own orders at the McDonald's at the digital screens. Next, degree of customer contact. Customer contact refers to the physical presence of the customer in the system. Degree of customer contact can be measured by the percentage of time the customer is in the system relative to the total service time. In high contact services, the customer determines the timing of demand and the nature of service by direct participation in the process. Customers have no direct influence on the production process of low contact system because they are not present. The next element is the degree of divergence. Now, a standardized service which has low divergence is designed for high volume with a narrowly defined and focused service. The tasks are routine and require a workforce with relatively low levels of technical skill. Due to the repetitive nature of service, opportunities for substitution of automation for labor are abound, that is, use of vending machine, automatic car wash, reducing the discretion of service workers. For customized services which have high divergence, more flexibility and judgment are required to perform the service task. In addition, more information is exchanged between the customer and the service worker. These characteristics of customized services require high levels of technical and analytical skill because the service process is unprogrammed and not well defined. For example, counseling service. To achieve customer satisfaction, decision making is delegated to service workers. And keep in mind, service workers in this case are like walking billboards. Next, location of service delivery. Should the service delivery process be located at the service provider's premises, or should the process be carried out at the customer's place? These are some important questions. For some services like painting, carpet cleaning, lawn care, etc., the service has to be delivered at home. Services that generally require the customer to come to the supplier have a greater opportunity to control the delivery experience. Example, dry cleaning, legal, medical, etc. However, increasingly many services are being delivered without the customer and supplier meeting. Example, through telephone banking, ATMs, etc. And finally, complexity of service. Complexity reflects a number of steps involved in delivering the service. Whether the service is high or low in complexity and in divergence can be readily determined by looking at its blueprint. For example, a physician's service is high in both complexity and diversion, whereas hotel services are high in complexity but low in divergence. Next, what is a service blueprint? Now we all know that processes refers to procedures, mechanisms and flow activities by which the service is delivered. And it does involve procedures, tasks, schedules, mechanisms and routine. Therefore, service firms use service blueprinting to better manage the service encounter and to allow clear visualization of the service process. Now let's take a quick stab at the service blueprint components. The first component itself is a physical evidence, that is the tangibles that customers are exposed to that can influence their quality perception. The next itself is the customer action. These include all the steps that customers take part in as a part of the service delivery process. Then comes the on-stage employee action that the customer is facing. Those actions of frontline contact employees that occur as a part of a service encounter. When the customer interacts with the on-stage employee action, it is known as line of interaction. And all this happens in front stage. So these three components, that is physical evidence, customer action and on-stage employee action, comes in the front stage because it is visible to the customer. Until here is the line of visibility. Then comes the backstage employee, which are invisible contact employees below the line of visibility. Now picture yourself in a restaurant. You are the customer, you have walked into a restaurant, so whatever actions you do comes under the customer action gamut. Around you are the tables, chairs, lightings, whatever you can see and feel is the physical evidence. And the waiter coming and pouring a glass of water for you is the on-stage employee action. Now the backstage employee action in this case would be the chef who is behind the kitchen doors. He is the invisible contact employee below the line of visibility. Supporting these backstage employees are activities carried out by individuals and units within the company who are not contact employees but need to happen for the service to be delivered. Any interaction that takes place behind in the backstage between the backstage employee and the support system is known as line of internal interaction. Since this happens backstage, it falls under the gamut of backstage. So these are the final components of service blueprint. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on understanding consumer behavior in services. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Let's start with what is service quality and its importance. Service quality involves comparisons of expectation with the actual performance. As per Lewis and Boombs, service quality is a measure of how well the service delivered matches customer expectations. Delivering service quality means meeting the requirements of customer expectations on a consistent basis. Service firms can use the service quality in maintaining competitive advantage, and the customers can use the service quality for quality differentiation. Moving on, organizations are becoming increasingly aware of the importance of quality in maintaining competitive advantage. During the last decade, total quality management has been a buzzword for all business. Measuring quality in services is not a simple task since they are intangible and cannot be stored, as discussed in earlier chapters. Generally in services, the evaluation of quality is made during the service delivery process, which mainly comprises of an encounter between the customer and the service provider. Moving on to how do you measure service quality? Managers must measure service quality to identify service quality gaps. Thus, factors such as the type of gap, where it exists, and the remedial actions to be taken depend on measuring the service quality. Measurement of service quality includes soft and hard measures. Let's look at each one of them briefly, starting with hard measures. Hard measures relate to those characteristics of a service that can be counted, timed, or measured through audits. They refer to operational processes or outcomes and include data indicating service response time, failure rates, and delivery cost. In such cases, service firms use control charts. Hard measures include the following. For instance, the number of minutes a customer must wait in line to get to the counter. Next, on-time takeoff of a flight. And finally, the number of patients that made a complete recovery post the operation, in this case, the doctor's success rate. Moving on to the soft measures. Soft measures are those that cannot be easily observed and must be collected by talking to customers, employees, or others. Soft standards provide direction, guidance, and feedback to employees regarding how to achieve customer satisfaction. A proper feedback from customers can make a long-run change in the attitude of the employees and the company. Soft measures include the following, such as ongoing surveys of customers by telephone or mail, a customer advisory panel to offer feedback and advise on service performance, and employee surveys and panels to determine barriers to providing better service and suggestions for improvements. Now, how do you improve service quality? Improving service quality involves the following. First, identifying quality determinants. This is another video that we've covered later on in this module. Then the second way of improving service quality is managing evidence, as in the physical evidence that we discussed in the chapter of physical evidence. Then comes the element of educating customers, developing a quality culture, and automating service. Moving on, the tools to analyze and address service quality problems are: first, the fishbone diagram, also known as a cause and effect analysis. This is covered under the management segment of our courses. Then comes the option of blueprinting. This is covered in the service sector module itself under the chapter of process. Number 3 is a Pareto chart. Then comes the element of total quality management. And finally, Six Sigma. Now moving on to the concept of zone of tolerance and improving service quality. We all know that services are heterogeneous. Thus, performance may vary across providers, across employees from the same provider, and even with the same service employee. The extent to which customers recognize and are willing to accept this variation is called zone of tolerance and is shown in the figure. Now let's understand the diagram of zone of tolerance. If the service drops below the adequate service, indicated in a blue bar on the left, the minimum level considered acceptable, customers will be frustrated with the company and the image will be damaged. Now, if the service performance is outside the zone of tolerance at the top, that means at the yellow bar, and where performance exceeds desired service, customers will be very pleased and probably quite surprised as well. You might consider the zone of tolerance as a range or window in which customers do not particularly notice service performance, that is the grey area. When it falls outside the range, that is either very low, that is towards the blue bar, or very high, towards the yellow bar, the service gets the customer's attention in either a positive or a negative way. So simply, if the service falls below the level of adequate service, it would be in a negative way, and if the service reaches a desired service, it would be in a positive way. Let's look at an example of zone of tolerance. Consider the service an airline passenger receives from the ticket counter when checking luggage. Most customers hold a range of acceptable times for this service encounter, probably somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. Now, if a customer enters the line and finds sufficient airline personnel at their counters to serve her in first 2 or 3 minutes, she may judge the service as excellent. On the other hand, if a customer has to wait in line for 15 minutes, she begins to grumble and stares at the employee behind the counters marked counter not open. The longer the wait is outside the zone of tolerance, the more frustrated she becomes. So here, in this case, 2 to 3 minutes and getting the service would be the desired service. And if the service takes about 15 minutes, it would be below the adequate service. Now moving on to some examples of service quality overall. Let's start with the first one, the Oberoi Hotel. In this case, PRS Oberoi, the ex-Story and Perfection. PRS Oberoi, also known as Bicky Oberoi, the ex-chairman of Oberoi Group of Hotels, was famous for his persistence on an egg yolk being correct shade of yellow for use in omelette served at his properties. In fact, several chefs at the Oberoi Hotel were stressed at his habit of randomly breaking an egg to check the color of the yolk, or sometimes even returning his breakfast because the color is not right. As he famously stated, "If I go to a hotel and order eggs and the color of the yolk is not right, I will tell the manager you cannot make an omelette or boiled eggs or even fried eggs from a yolk that is not of the right color. So much for perfection. For him, perfection was not about reaching 99%. He always stated, no, it has to be 99.5%. He acknowledged the fact that luxury and perfection are difficult to achieve. Therefore, he allowed his team for a 0.5% chance of not achieving 100%. And the final example, again in this case of Pierre Sobroy, in this case quality and customization. Vicky Oberoi's obsession was so legendary that an affluent guest at the Oberoi Gurgaon in India stated, "A napkin in an Oberoi hotel is whiter than my shirt, and in Delhi, few can afford a shirt as white as mine." Customization is another segment that Oberoi aces at. Every time a guest checks into an Oberoi property, his or her details are factored in. These entail dietary choices, favorite flowers, pillow options, and more. These are maintained and shared across the entire Oberoi hotel ecosystem. For instance, whenever Sanjay Rishi, the former president of American Express South Asia, checks into any of the Oberoi properties, his room is stocked with the brand of Oolong green tea. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on how do you manage service quality. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you.
Service quality involves comparisons of expectations with the actual performance. As per Lewis and Booms, service quality is a measure of how well the service delivered matches customer expectations. Delivering service quality means satisfying the requirements of customer expectations consistently. The service organizations can use the service quality in sustaining competitive advantage, and the clients can use the service quality at the point of differentiation. Organizations are becoming more woke for the importance of quality in maintaining a competitive advantage. Moving on to the gap model. Customer service is mainly viewed as a function of perception, customer expectation, and the actual service provided. If the service provided meets customers' wants and expectation, then the customer is satisfied. If the service provided fails to live up to the customer expectation, then the customer is unsatisfied. Unsatisfaction occurs due to the gaps that appear in customer service. Thus, the gap model benefits marketers to identify these service gaps. Let's see how. Ziatmal, Berry and Parsuraman identified 4 potential gaps that arise within the service organization, which may direct to a final and the most severe gap, the service gap. Service gap is the difference between what the customers expect and what they perceive is delivered to them. Gap model has been further explained to identify 6 types of gaps that can occur at various points during the planning and delivering of a service. So now let's look at each of these gaps briefly along with the build-up of the model. Let's start with the first one. Gap 1, knowledge gap. As you can see, it is a gap between what the customer's needs and expectations are and what are the management definition of these needs. Gap 1, not knowing what customers expect is a problem encountered in this gap. Reasons for this gap include lack of synergy between management and customers, lack of communication between contact employees and managers, incompetent market research, and lack of segmentation of customers. Moving on to gap 2, that is a standard gap or the policy gap. Here, not selecting the right service design and standard is the obstacle faced. Reasons for the same include inefficient service design, improper physical evidence, unsystematic new service development process, and failure to connect service design to service positioning. Next, the delivery gap. Difference between defined standard and delivery team's actual performance on the standard is another gap that is measured in this model. Reasons for the delivery gap include incompetent recruitment, lack of empowerment and perceived control and teamwork, inappropriate evaluation and compensation system, failure to bridge supply and demand, and customers lacking understanding of their roles and responsibilities. The next gap is the communication gap. This gap throws light on companies that fail to match performance with the promises made. Reasons for this type of gap are a tendency to view each external communication as independent, unable to manage client expectation through all forms of communication, not sufficiently educating customers, over-promising and under-delivering, and differences in policies and procedures across branches or units. Next, gap 5, which is the perception gap. This gap focuses on the problem of the difference between what is delivered and what customers perceive that they have received. Reasons for the same include customers don't always correctly understand what the service had done for them. This situation is likely to occur with credence services for which it isn't easy to judge service performance even after delivery. For instance, A doctor explaining the course of the operation to its patient about what was found and what the patient can expect in the future. And finally, Gap 6, Service Gap. Last but not the least, the service gap talks about the difference between what the customers expect to receive and their perception of service that is delivered to them. This gap is the most critical one out of them all, and the terminal goal should be in narrowing or closing this gap entirely. The accumulation of gaps between the earlier stages of 1 to 5 lead to this final service gap.
So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on the gap model. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you.
Let's start with the introduction. Determinants of service quality point different ways in which consumers judge the quality of service provided. Beru, Parsuraman and Ziatmal distinguished 10 criteria applied by consumers in assessing quality. They are reliability, competence, courtesy, credibility, security, tangibility, access, communication, understanding the customer, and responsiveness. Now, due to a large degree of correlation among the most of these variables, they condense the 10 dimensions into 5 broad dimensions called the Rater model, which stands for reliability, assurance, tangibility, empathy, and responsiveness. Now, let's start with reliability. Reliability out of all the 5 dimensions has consistently been observed to be the most critical determinant of accessing service quality. Reliability means the ability to perform the assured services responsibly and correctly. It is a pointer of how well a company delivers its commitment. Let's look at an example. The most reliable airlines for 2019. A UK-based medical travel insurance provider, GetGoing, found Japan Airlines to be the most reliable airline in the year 2019. It also named the airline as the number 1 best airline overall. It was counted based on the percentage of flights delayed, percentage of flights cancelled, average delay, waiting time, safety ranking, and customer rating. Japan Airlines had just 10.54% of flights delayed, around 1% of flights cancelled, and had a lowest delay time of 31.7 minutes. The airline safety ranking garnered a banging 10 on 10, and its customer rating was good at 7 out of 10. Next up is assurance. Assurance is nothing but the staff's knowledge which qualifies them to perform the services efficiently. It is the ability of the firm and its employees to instill faith and assurance in the minds of the customers. Staff competence, credibility, courtesy, and security are the key traits that customers derive assurance from. This particular dimension proves to be critical for services such as banking, insurance, brokerage, medical, and legal sector. Example for assurance, the list of the world's safest banks for 2019. As the potential of macroeconomic disturbance were higher, the global finance ranking of the world's safest bank is particularly valuable in 2019. Here's a list of the banks that made it to the top 10. Next up are tangibles. The presentation of physical facilities, equipment, staff, and communication elements define tangibles. All services have a portion of tangibility, although the significance for the same may vary. Tangibles are usually utilized by service organizations to heighten their image and signal quality to customers. Example, Etihad Airways, the residence. The airline provides a luxury 3-room apartment in the sky. Accommodating up to 2 guests, it highlights a shower room, a private bedroom, a separate living area, a VIP travel concierge, and a dedicated team that takes care of everything one could possibly need. It also provides a chauffeur-driven limousine to the private airport lounge. As always, innovative luxury travel doesn't come cheap. For a one-way flight from Sydney to Dubai, this innovative luxury, the Resident, charges around $23,000 one way. Etihad seeks service very sincerely for its first-class passengers, and its butlers are trained at the world-famous Savvy Hotel. Thus, attention to detail is eminent. The next dimension is empathy. Empathy is often explained as walking a mile in someone else's shoes. The thought is that one can just really understand someone's pain if you've experienced it yourself. This stands equally true when dealing with the request or complaints. Empathy is the ability of understanding consumer needs and offering personalized care attention to them. Employees are required to be considerate about customers at all touchpoints. Easy access, communication, and understanding the customers fall under the purview of empathy. Let's look at some of the examples of empathy. Example 1. Southwest Airlines comfort through turbulence. 9-year-old Gabby, who had type 1 diabetes, was extremely anxious about being on an aeroplane. A Southwest airline flight attendant, Garrick, went leaps beyond his call of duty and worked throughout the flight to make her more comfortable, getting her special drinks and trying to distract her by making her laugh after he noticed her struggling during takeoff. He let her sit in the empty seat next to him when the plane hit a serious patch of turbulence and even let her grab his arm for comfort. At the end, after a safe landing, Garrick used the PA to tell the whole plane that his new friend Gabby had just defeated her fear of flying and that she deserved a round of applause from the entire plane. Example 2. United Airlines delays flight for dying mother. United Airlines flight had a passenger named Kerry Drake who was flying to see his mother who was experiencing her final hours. He knew that if he missed his connecting flight, he would possibly not see her before she passed. After his first flight's delay, Drake broke down into tears on the plane. The flight stewardess soon noticed his condition and quickly found the reason for the same. Within minutes of this episode, Drake's difficulty was conveyed to the captain, who radioed ahead to Drake's next flight. The flight's crew acknowledged by delaying the flight's departure just to make sure he got on board. After realizing how much went behind getting him on the plane, he was overwhelmed with emotions, and this encounter reflected the human side of the company. And the final dimension of the Rater model, responsiveness. Responsiveness is the enthusiasm to help customers and render timely services. Being the last dimension, it emphasizes on attentiveness and agility in dealing with consumer needs, requests, problems, and acquisitions. A company's responsiveness is calculated by the duration of the time the customer has to wait for proper assistance. Let's look at an example for responsiveness. Under Wendy's umbrella. During a heavy rainstorm, one fine day, a Wendy's employee pulled out an umbrella from the store table just to walk an elderly gentleman to his car to protect him and keep him warm against the harsh weather. The employee put his task aside and went outside to look out for an old man from the rain. A passerby was able to catch this heartwarming moment and posted it on Reddit, which instantly went viral on the internet.
So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on dimensions of service quality, also known as a SERQUAL model. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. One of the major issues in services is that it cannot be stored or inventoried. This issue leads to temporary imbalances between the supply and demand of services. This supply-demand mismatch poses a difficult challenge for managers of service firms. At any given moment, a fixed capacity service may face one of the following 4 conditions. First, excess demand. The level of demand exceeds the maximum available capacity, with the result that some customers are denied service and business is lost. For example, there are 100 tables in a restaurant, so those 100 tables are known as supply. And there are 200 reservations, which has the demand in this case. Clearly, 100 tables versus 200 reservations is a complete mismatch, and in this case, excess demand. Taking the same example forward for other 3 situations. Situation number 2. Demand exceeds optimum capacity. In this case, no customer is turned away. However, given the excess demand, customers are likely to perceive deterioration in the quality of service. Again, in this scenario, there are 100 tables in a restaurant, so the supply is fixed, and there are about 125 reservations for the tables. Now, in this case, some customers have to wait, and there is strain on the kitchen and the serving staff. Moving on to situation number 3, which is well-balanced demand and supply. Now, this is the optimum level of capacity. 100 tables in a restaurant and 100 reservations of the table, which is a perfect situation for the restaurant, which is highly unlikely in certain scenarios. The 4th situation where demand is less. Demand is below the optimum capacity and productive resources are underutilized. Customers may even have doubts about the service. Example, 100 tables in a restaurant and 20 reservations for the tables. This results in a waste of resources and customers might judge the restaurant. Thus, an organization must take efforts to understand the demand patterns and its capacity constraints to effectively formulate strategies that can match demand and capacity. This will ultimately entail adjusting either the demand or the capacity. There are 2 ways an organization can deal with a demand-supply mismatch. First, increase or decrease the capacity to match demand fluctuations. That is, you're managing your supply. Or the other one, shift the demand to meet the capacity. In this case, you're managing the demand. Now, before we jump onto these steps, let's look at some live examples of demand and capacity adjustment. First, Vistara, a premier airline joint venture between Singapore Airlines and Tata Sons, was launched on January 9, 2015. Vistara initially struggled to fill its planes, registering a load factor of only 50 to 60% for most of the year. In response to this, Vistara reduced its front end of the cabin, reducing its business class seats to 8 and reducing its premium economy seats by a third to 24. This helped the airline increase its economy class seats by 30% to 126 seats. Further, Vistara announced a 30% discount on its business class seats. Now, by playing around by the number of seats available in the business class, premium economy and economy, here Vistara was trying to manage the supply that it is offering. Moving on to the next example of Singapore Airlines and Malaysian Airline partnership. The Singapore Airlines and Malaysia Airlines have been granted conditional approval for a partnership as stated by the Competition and Consumer Commission of Singapore. The agreement entails both airlines working together in areas such as revenue sharing, joint sales and marketing. This will ultimately help them grow traffic between two countries and to other markets within Europe. Under the codeshare agreement, both airlines can sell seats on each other's flights. This will ultimately benefit passengers with a wider choice of end destination. This ultimately means that they get to widen their capacity or managing their supply of seats. Moving on, let's look at strategies for managing capacity to match demand. In short, we are managing supply. First, customers' involvement. By converting certain operations to self-service like buffets and restaurants and fast food joints, the firms can divert its own personnel to other functions. Self-service firms lose a certain measure of control over service quality when the customers are asked to perform key function. Next, using part-time employees. Part-timers can help supplement regular employees when the peak of activity are persistent and predictable. Already part-time labor is available from college students and others who are interested in supplementing their primary source of income, summer jobs or internship jobs. Next, cross-training employees. At times when one operation is busy, the other operation may be idle. Cross-training employees do the task in various operations, creates flexible capacity to meet demand. Fourth, modify or move facilities and equipments. Sometimes it may be possible to modify the existing capacity to meet the demand fluctuation. For example, the new Boeing 777 aircraft is so flexible that it can be reconfigured to accommodate extra number of seats allocated to 1, 2 or 3 classes. Thus, the plane can be quickly modified to match the demand arising from different market segments, as we saw in the case of Vistara. Next, sharing capacity. A large investment in equipment and facilities exists in a service delivery system. At the time of underutilization, it may be possible to find other use of the capacity. Next, stretching existing capacity. In order to match the demand, the existing capacity of service resources can be expanded. Under such circumstances, no new resources are added, but people, facilities and equipment are asked to work harder. This is usually the case on weekends at nightclubs and lounges, where the same number of employees are asked to attend to a maximum number of guests. And finally, schedule downtime and maintenance during low demand. If during the peak period, people, equipment and facilities are being used at maximum capacity, then it is necessary to conduct repairs, maintenance and renovations during off period. And finally, strategies for managing demand to match capacity. First, partition the demand. The demand for services is often grouped into random arrivals and planned arrivals. For example, at a doctor's clinic, the walk-in patients arriving are more than those with appointments. Thus, appointments can be controlled, but walk-in demand is uncontrollable. We often find the inflow of patients is higher on weekdays than weekend. Therefore, in order to level a demand, a partition can be created to keep appointments in the latter part of the week, that is weekends, and only walk-in patients on weekdays. Next, vary the service offering. Depending on the season of the year, day of the week, or time of the day, we can change the nature of the service offering. For example, accounting firms focus on tax preparations and general activities late in the year and until April when the taxes are due. During the other times of the year, they can focus on auditing and other general counseling activities. Third, developing complementary services. Complementary services are basically offered in order to occupy waiting customers. Restaurants have discovered the benefit of complementary services by adding a bar to the restaurant. The customers can enjoy food and drinks separately as well as together. Number 4, promoting off-peak demand. During off-seasons, holiday resorts use the premises as a retreat location for business or professional groups. This ensures that the fixed capacity doesn't stay idle. Next, pricing incentives. In order to smoothen the demand on the service processes, prices can be raised during peak times and lower at non-peak times. Movie halls have morning shows and hotels offer lowest rate during weekends. And finally, communicate with the customer if everything else fails. Another way for shifting the demand is communicate with the customer. Let them know the peak demand period so that they can choose to use the service at alternative times and avoid crowding. Finally, strategies when demand and capacity cannot be matched. First, reservations and appointments. Next, triage as an emergency first. Third, waiting lines. And finally, delaying the service delivery. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on how to manage demand and supply in services. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Let's start with what is benchmarking and why should you do it? Benchmarking means studying another organization's performance in an aspect of your business in order to improve your own business. It is a continuous process of comparing a company's strategy, products, and processes with those of the world leaders and the best-in-class service organizations. Benchmarking is one of managers' best tools for determining whether the company is performing particular functions and activities efficiently, whether its costs are in line with those of competitors. Moving on, benchmarking is a process through which a company measures its products, services, and practices against its toughest competitors or those companies recognized as leaders in its industries. The idea behind benchmarking is to measure internal processes against an external standard. It is a way of learning which companies are best at performing certain activities and functions and then imitating or better, still improving on their techniques. Now let's look at some examples of benchmarking. Starting with the first one, Ritz-Carlton, a benchmark in Jordanian hospitality. Ritz-Carlton opened a new property in Amman, Jordan. It is set to become the new benchmark for hospitality in the entire country. Ritz-Carlton Hotel and Residence Amman offers modern lifestyle living through the brand's unique food and beverage dining venues, luxurious club lounge, meeting and event spaces, and the largest luxurious rooms in the city. The hotel also has a 1,000 square meter grand ballroom, a boardroom, and 5 meeting rooms. The hotel also offers a full-service spa and wellness experience. It houses indoor and outdoor temperature-controlled pools, 6 treatment rooms, and the largest jacuzzi in Amman. Moving on to the next example of Emirates Airlines, a benchmark in post-COVID travel. In 2020, Emirates was rated as the safest airline in the world in its response to the COVID-19 pandemic norms, according to the Safe Travel Barometer. The airline set an industry-leading safety benchmark since the resumption of its operations and topped the ranks with a safe travel score of 4.4 out of 5 among 220-plus airlines judged worldwide. The score is based on an independent audit of 26 health and safety parameters, evaluating traveler convenience, safety protocols announced by airlines. Safe Travel Barometer monitors and benchmarks initiatives in the travel, tourism, and hospitality space for the post-COVID world. Now moving on to benchmarking basis for any service organization. A company that decides to undertake a benchmarking initiative should consider the following questions. Number 1. When? Benchmarking can be used at any time, but it is usually performed in response to the needs that arise within a company. Next, why? This is the most important question in the management decision to begin the benchmarking process. Question number 3. Who? Companies may decide to benchmark internally, against competitors, against industry performance, or against the best of the best. Question number 4. What? Benchmarking can focus on roles, processes, or strategic issues. It can be used to establish the function or mission of an organization. And question number 5. How? Benchmarking uses different sources of information, including published material, trade meetings, consultants, customers, and marketing representatives. Benchmarking can be applied at 3 levels. Let's see how. First, internal benchmarking. These can be carried out in a larger organization by way of comparisons between operating units. Thus, a financial institution might benchmark operations across branches, different colleges under the same education authority, etc. Next, competitive benchmarking. This is probably the most frequently quoted use where comparisons are made with directly competitive organizations. And finally, functional or generic benchmarking. This approach compares specific functions such as distribution and after-sales service. The advantages here are that information is sometimes easier to obtain than when comparisons are being made with competitors. Care has to be taken in selecting the dimensions and scales to be used for performance measurement. And finally, benefits of benchmarking. First, the best practices from any industry may be creatively incorporated into a company's operations. Next, benchmarking is motivating. It provides targets that have been achieved by others. Resistance to change may be lessened if ideas for improvement come from other industries. And finally, benchmarking broadens people's experience base and increases knowledge. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on benchmarking of services. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. The true test of a firm's commitment to satisfaction and service quality isn't in the advertising promises, but in the way it responds when things go wrong for the customer. Success in this area includes employee training and motivation. Simon Bell and James Luddington have found that although complaints generally tend to have a negative effect on service personnel's commitment to customer service, but employees with a positive attitude towards service and their own jobs may be more likely to view complaints as a potential source of improvement. Effective service recovery requires thoughtful procedures for resolving problems and handling disgruntled or angry customers. It is critical for firms to have effective recovery strategies because even a single service problem under the following connotations can destroy a customer's confidence in a firm. First, when the failure can be totally outrageous, as in there is blatant dishonesty on the part of the service provider, or the problem fits a pattern of failure rather than an isolated incident, that means again and again, or finally, the recovery efforts are weak, serving to compound or add to the original problem. Moving on. The risk of customer defection is high, especially when a variety of competing alternatives is available in the market. When complaints are satisfactorily resolved, there is much higher chances that a customer involved will remain loyal. Complaint handling should be seen as a profit center, not a cost center. However, many organizations have yet to buy into the concept that it pays to invest in service recovery designed to protect those long-term profits. Now let's look at components of an effective service recovery system. In an ideal scenario, if you do the job right the first time, plus you have an effective complaint handling mechanism, it will ultimately lead to increased satisfaction and loyalty on behalf of the customer. But in order to do that, your complaint handling mechanism needs to be spot on, which is only possible wherein if you have first, you can identify service complaints, which will include conducting research, monitoring complaints, and developing complaints as an opportunity culture. Once done, you can resolve complaints effectively, for which you will have to develop an effective system and training in complaint handling. Once these two steps are done, you finally learn from the recovery experience, which is only possible when you conduct a root cause analysis of every issue that comes up in the service. And finally, when you learn from the recovery experience, you ensure that you close the loop via the feedback, and on the next job, you do the job right the first time. Now looking at some examples of service recovery, in this case, Ritz-Carlton. Ritz-Carlton's unique service recovery process involves proactively searching for new ways to make their guests happy and receive outstanding service. Ritz famously imparts its employees wherein they are allowed an informal $2,000 allowance to fix service issues without having to speak to their manager. Key metrics tracked by Ritz-Carlton are number of complaints, responses to complaints, customer satisfaction scores, employee turnover rates, and growth of revenue as a result of increase in quality. Additionally, Ritz also measures room inspection results, room maintenance frequency, check-in time, and use of service such as room service, laundry service, and spa services. Ultimately, all of this stems from Ritz-Carlton's quality parameters. Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company was a recipient of the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award in 1992 and 1999, which is the first hotel which was awarded this award. The Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award and the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program are managed by the NIST under the US Department of Commerce. Ritz has ensured quality and improvement, implementing TQM technique and continuing the reputation of outstanding service. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on impact of service recovery efforts on customer loyalty. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Well, let's start with how to be sensitive to customers' reluctance to change. Customers' resistance to change in familiar environments and long-established behavior patterns can ruin attempts to improve productivity and even quality. Failure to examine proposed changes from the customer's perspective may increase resistance. Now let's look at steps to smoothen the path of change for customers. Now, if you're a service organization, you need to follow these 6 steps. First, develop customer trust. It's more difficult to introduce productivity-related change when people are basically distrustful of the service provider. Customers' willingness to accept change may be closely related to the degree of goodwill they have towards the organization. Service companies need to ensure that their employees who serve the customers gain their trust. Next, understand customers' expectations. People often get into a routine in using service, with certain steps being taken in specific sequence. In such scenarios, innovation that disrupt fixed routines are likely to face resistance unless consumers are carefully briefed as to what change to expect. It takes time for customers to trust any new innovation. Thus, the company needs to be empathetic towards them. For instance, the banking industry went a complete change from a brick-and-mortar model to a smartphone-oriented model where most of the banking today is done on a smartphone. So the older customers, especially over the age of 50s, find it difficult to move on to a situation where they have to do most of their banking on a smartphone.
vis-à-vis compared to what they did for the rest of their life on a brick and mortar approach. Moving on to the third step, pre-test any new procedures and equipment before you launch. To expose probable customers to new procedures and equipment, marketing researchers can conduct laboratory testing or field testing. Even the phasing of instruction needs careful thought. This ultimately entails conducting A and B tests prior to the change or launch of any new technology. At number 4, publicize the benefits of the new technology to the customer. Introduction of self-service equipment or procedure requires consumers to perform part of the task themselves. Although the additional work may be associated with benefits as extended service hours, time saving, etc., they must be promoted. Useful strategies may include use of mass media advertising and personal communication to inform people of the innovation. This will ultimately arouse their interest in it and clarify the specific benefit to customers of changing their behavior and using the new system. At number 5, teach customers. For customers to use innovation and promote trial, assign service personnel to demonstrate new equipment and answer questions, as done at the airports when the customers are asked to print their own boarding tickets. For web-based innovations, it's important to provide access to email, chat, or even telephone-based assistance. Promotion incentives and price discounts may also serve to stimulate initial trial. And finally, monitor the performance and seek improvements. Introducing quality and productivity improvements is an ongoing process. The competitive edge provided by productivity improvements may quickly disappear as other firms adopt similar or better procedures. Service managers must work hard to keep up the momentum so that programs achieve their full potential and are not allowed to fail. If customers are displeased by new procedures, they may revert to their previous behavior, so it's important to continue monitoring utilization over time. Finally, let's look at how does Starbucks smoothen the path of change for its customers. In this particular case study, we are looking at their customer-centric drive-thru model, which was perfected over a decade. Did you know, sales from drive-thru segment accounted for more than 50% of net sales in the second quarter during 2020 for Starbucks. Starbucks' drive-thru experience is finely focused on customer behavior and has generated millions for the coffee chain. Not many are aware, but there was a time that the senior executives of Starbucks were not convinced about the drive-thru model. They believed that the drive-thru model projected an image of fast food to customers. Therefore, in 2010, Starbucks conducted an audit of its drive-thrus. The audits revealed that a drive-thru consists of many different customer zones, or I may say touch points. The zones are approach, entry, pre-order, order, pay, and pickup and exit zone, with each being a unique customer touchpoint. Starbucks understood customer needs and behaviors in each zone and established specific targets for each zone. Thus, the order and verification zone includes a live two-way video feed with the team member taking your order, thus ensuring personalization as witnessed within the store. Then Starbucks identified the most important communication at a drive-thru, which is the menu board itself. Starbucks tested numerous menu board layouts to evaluate different strategies and tactics. Key tactics included use of larger visuals, smart placement of key items, and inserting popular in-cafe items to the drive-thru. And finally, cross-selling food and beverage items to increase per order value, thus establishing a 60-40% food to beverage ratio. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on how to be sensitive to customers' reluctance to change. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. According to recent route, positioning is not what you do to a product, rather what you do to the minds of the prospect. You position the product or service in the mind of the prospect. According to Kotler, positioning is the act of designing the company's offer and image so that it occupies a distinct and valued price in the target customer's mind. Moving on to the objectives of positioning in a service. First, to create a distinctive place of service in the minds of potential customers. Then, to provide a competitive edge to a service, that is, an attempt to convey the attractiveness of the service to the target market. Next, place an intangible service within a more tangible frame of reference. Then, help influence both service development and redesign of existing service. Then comes the following consideration of competitors' move and responses so that appropriate action can be taken. Next, to give the target market the reason of buying your services and then designing the whole strategy. And finally, providing guidelines for the development of marketing mix, in this case 7 Ps, with each element being consistent with the positioning. Now let's look at some positioning examples. First, the Oberoi Raj Villas in Jaipur. The Oberoi Raj Villas are the epitome of luxury. Vicky Oberoi, the ex-chairman of Oberoi Hotels, ensured that it was positioned as a top-notch destination.
As pointed out by the then general manager of the property, Anshul Kaul, the network of gardens with regal fountains, jasmine flowers, gulmohar, jacaranda, mustard yellow gooseberry, etc. All of it were chosen carefully after long discussions with Bicky Oberoi, who knew every small detail that had gone into making of the property, just to ensure that the property is positioned as an ultimate luxury in India. Moving on to Bicky's idea of luxury or being positioned as a luxury brand. Bicky Oberoi's definition of luxury is inspired not just by Indian palaces but also by his globe-trotting life. For Bicky Oberoi, luxury is about height, light and space. The thought led him to ensuring that there are large naturally lit bathrooms at Oberoi properties. The Oberoi villas ultimately are an expression of Bicky Oberoi's vision of what global level Indian luxury should feel and look like. For instance, the Oberoi Raj Villas opened in 1998 and was built at ₹100 crores. Over the years, it has won several awards and has been rated as one of the finest hotels in the world. Now moving on to the positioning procedure for a service firm. Number 1. Identifying the competitors. This step requires broad thinking. Competitors may not just be those services that fall into a class of services or which we compete directly with. The marketer must consider all likely competitors as well as the various effects of use and situation on the consumers. Step 2. Determining how competitors are perceived and evaluated. Once the competitors have been defined, we must determine how they are perceived by consumers and which attributes are considered important. For instance, in the selection of a bank, it may include convenience, teller friendliness, financial security, and a host of other factors. Determining the competitor's position. Having determined the relevant attributes and their relative importance to consumers, we must determine how each competitor is positioned with respect to each attribute. This will also show how the competitors are positioned relative to each other. Fourth, analyzing customers' preference. Segmentation distinguishes among groups of consumers, including lifestyles, purchase motivations, demographic differences, and so on. Each of these segments may have different purchase motivation and different attribute importance ratings. Identifying the ideal service can help the marketer identify different ideal among segments with similar or the same ideal points. Number 5. Making the positioning decision. After going through the first 4 steps, the final positioning decision is to be made. Such a decision is not always clear and well defined. Conducting research may provide only limited input. In that case, the marketing manager must make some subjective judgment. And finally, monitoring the position. Once a position has been established, it is necessary to monitor how well this position is being maintained in the marketplace. Tracking studies measure the image of the service firm over time. Changes in consumer perception can be determined with any slippage immediately noted and reacted to. At the same time, the impact of competitors can also be determined. So now let's look at what are the positioning strategies for a service firm. Number 1. Positioning based on service attributes. A company can position the service attributes such as facilitating and supporting services. In this case, Marriott Bonvoy's Rewards Reimagined. Next, service benefits. This strategy focuses on the distinctive benefits of using the service to the consumer. Example in this case of Disneyland, which has been positioned as the happiest place on earth. Third, service application positioning. This service company makes the consumer identify the service need or desire and the suitability of the service offered to satisfy his or her need or desire. Example, Uber, move the way you want. Fourth, service user positioning. A service company may identify the target group and position the services as the best for them. As stated by Allstate, you are in good hands. Next, competitive positioning. The positioning may be against the competition or away from the competition. In this case, Burger King's positioning vis-à-vis McDonald's. Next, quality positioning. This positioning focuses on the quality leadership of the firm. In this case, Kentucky Fried Chicken and the positioning of their finger-licking good chicken. Next, price positioning. The positioning is to communicate the best value for the price a consumer pays. In this case, MasterCard. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard. Next, leadership positioning. This communicates to the consumer that the service company is a major shareholder in the market and enjoys the acceptance of the majority. Some companies may focus on innovation leadership. And finally, excellence positioning. The positioning is on the performance and efficiency of the firm. Example, premium hotel groups in India such as the Taj and the Oberoi use excellence in services as their positioning strategy. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on how do you position services. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Let's start with what is branding. The American Marketing Association defines a brand as a name, term, design, symbol, or any other feature that identifies one seller's goods or services as distinct from those of other sellers. A brand is a personality of a product or service that distinguishes a company from its competitors. A brand ultimately describes how it relates to customers, staff, partners, investors, etc. Now, before looking at branding of services, let's understand the branding of products. Products are made in the factory. However, brands are built in the mind of the consumers. The goal of product branding is to build intangible values and associations around the product to differentiate it from physically identical products that are available in the market. Example, an iPhone smartphone suggests something different to a buyer of Samsung smartphone, although they may have similar features. Advertisements portray emotional benefits, sensory cues, and brand personality to convey emotional meaning and the intangible value of the product and differentiate it. Now moving on to branding and services. Branding plays an important role in service companies because it helps increase customers' trust in an invisible purchase. Service branding includes corporate brands and sub-brands. A corporate brand is a blend of the following two elements. Service branding starts with the corporate brand. The presented brand, that is how the company presents itself through its own controlled communication. On the other hand, external brand communication modes such as word of mouth and publicity, which are not under the control of the service provider, may also impact the branding of services. Sub-brand, an important trend among many service organizations, is to apply branding principles to specific products or processes as a way of distinguishing the firm's service offering. Example in this case could be several mutual funds, different restaurants and 5-star hotels, several insurance policies, and classes of air travel. Generally, the corporate brand oversees all its sub-brand and is clearly linked to these sub-brands in advertising or other forms of communication. Moving on to branding implications of service characteristics. A brand is a perceptual entity. It resides in the customer's perceptual space. Brand image is a set of associations that are anchored to a name. Association building is relatively easier for a physical object. But services, as we all know, are intangible marketing entities. Thus, the branding implication of service characteristics are abstract nature, service evaluation, variability, customer role, and the issue of inter-customer contact. Now let's take a stab at each one of them briefly, starting with the abstract nature of service. Goods tend to be tangible and therefore can be touched, smelled, and seen before. Services do not permit the same for reasons of intangibility. Services usually involve an amalgam of disparate elements to create a service experience. In order to make up for abstraction and intangibility, tangible clues can be used. Such clues can provide assurance and signal an image. Moving on, the issue of service evaluation. Services with high credence and experience qualities are difficult to evaluate. In a situation of pre-purchase quality, the customer is forced to rely on other available clues and evidences. Service branders need to discover these clues and evidence and employ them creatively while communicating with the prospect. Next, the aspect of variability. Heterogeneity of a service can kill a brand. Service heterogeneity must be checked and controlled by employing various mechanisms. Employee training and controls can standardize employee performance. This is used extensively in the airline and the hospitality segment, where employees wear a similar uniform and go through similar training. Next, customer role. In many services, customers play a significant role in service creation. Service brands suffer when ambiguity surrounds customers' goals, and the role a customer expected to perform for an effective service must be communicated. If needed, appropriate motivators must be used to get customer cooperation. In today's era, especially in the fast food world, customers typically place orders on their own mobile phone or at screens at most of these fast food joints. So that increases the role of customers in service creation. And finally, inter-customer contact. Quality of service brand does not solely depend upon actions of the service provider. In many services, the quality depends a great deal on how other customers using the same service behave. Customer focus and consistency are essential in creating strong service brands. This is especially important at fast food joints where customers place their own orders and come in contact with other customers in the queue. Now moving on to the benefits of branding services. First, it helps in reducing comparison. Next, the issue of variability is addressed to a great extent. It helps make the intangibles tangible. It provides a firm with a corporate identity. It enables a firm to distinguish its services from other competing services. It helps customers develop value perceptions regarding the service. And finally, it helps develop customer relations. Now let's conclude by looking at differences between branding of products and services. Product branding is easier than service branding because it is easier to achieve congruence, as in a logic between what advertising conveys and the product experience. On the other hand, services are intangible and can be experienced only in real time at various points of delivery. There is also significant variability in service delivery, even from the same service provider at various points in time. As in, if you fly to New York on the same airline, but you will encounter different kind of employees every time, and the service might differ on the different occasions. And finally, perceptions of service differentials are built more on the basis of actual experience than through advertising, because services is something that consumers experience, and that's how they make judgments about the service. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on branding of services. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Let's start with what is a transnational strategy. A transnational strategy can be termed as a plan of action whereby a company operates across international borders. This strategy entails overseas operations and assets, linking them to every country in which the company operates. Transnational strategies ultimately combine global integration and local responsiveness to each market. Now let's look at some examples of the transnational model. First, McDonald's. McDonald's nails the transnational model of strategy. McDonald's is the world's biggest restaurant chain with over 37,000 restaurants in more than 120 markets. The fast food chain divides its target markets into segments by country, region and cities and then customizes its menu. McDonald's modifies its product offerings in line with the geographic and cultural region. For instance, in Japan, they factor in seasonal taste, for example, the teritami burger in springtime and the sukimi burger in autumn. Further, McDonald's procures over 90% of its raw material from local vendors or invests in resources which are not locally available. Moving on to the next example of Netflix. Now, Netflix perfected this model in a decade. At the end of 2021, Netflix had approximately 222 million paid memberships. In terms of regions, United States and Canada account for the maximum paid membership. Where in terms of growth, 90% of the subscribers added in 2021 were outside the US and Canada. Netflix's reach spans in more than 190 countries across the world. Additionally, it offers different genre of content in more than 37 languages and has made shows in 40 different countries. The variety in language has not stopped viewers from English-speaking countries to binge-watch non-English shows. For instance, non-English viewing in the United States witnessed a stellar growth of 71% from 2019 in 2020. Now moving on to some factors favoring transnational strategy. First, market drivers. Common customer needs across different countries. Presence of global customers who demand consistent service for suppliers all around the world. And availability of proper infrastructure such as technology, communication, supply chain, etc. Next, technology driver. Technological advancement in the areas of telecommunication, computerization, software development are the technological drivers that influences the company to adopt such a strategy. Growing availability of broadband telecommunication channels, easy access to internet facilities all around the world has helped a company to go global. Firms can take advantage of favorable labor by consolidating operations of supplementary services, maybe such as reservations, or back office functions such as accounting, in just one or few selected countries. Next, cost drivers. Operating at a global level enables the company to reduce the cost of operation, thereby increasing the efficiency. This is because globalization helps the companies to outsource its processes to such countries where same process can be completed at a cheaper rate, that too with higher efficiency. Moreover, global companies can also take the advantages of economies of scale by manufacturing products and services on a large scale and making optimum utilization of available resources. Fourth, competition drivers. Firms may be obliged to follow their competitors into new markets in order to protect their positions elsewhere. The presence of competitors from different countries, independence of countries, and the transnational policies of competitors themselves are among the key competition drivers that exercise a powerful force in many service industries. And finally, government drivers. Government policies can serve to encourage or development of a transnationally integrated strategy. Among these drivers are favorable trade policies, technical assistance, and granting subsidies and tax exemptions. Now moving on to some characteristics of transnational strategy. First, global market participation. Transnational strategy enables a company to operate at a global level. It enables the company to participate in the global market. Management selects the various countries on the basis of attractiveness as well as the potential of each country to generate reasonable returns. Next, delivering global products. The firm offers one or more standardized core products in many countries. At times, firms may offer a broader product line in some countries while it may restrict itself to a narrow product line in other countries depending upon revenue generating capacity of each country. Next, global location of services. When a company operates within the country, the supply chain is restricted within. However, when a company adopts transnational strategy, the entire supply chain is spread across countries. This is because when a company operates at a global level, it may outsource some of its processes to other countries to gain advantage of low cost with greater efficiency. Thus, adoption of transnational strategy results in having global location for performing various value-adding services. Next, global marketing. When a company adopts transnational strategy, that is, when a company operates all around the globe, they have to adopt global marketing strategies. Although the basic elements of marketing may remain the same in all countries, company may adopt different pricing and promotion policy in different countries. Pricing, for instance, may differ from country to country depending upon the level of competition, level of taxes, etc. Additionally, tools for promotion may also vary from country to country. And finally, global competitive moves. When a company operates at a global level, it has to adopt global competitive strategies. Different countries may have different level of competitors and competition. Thus, a company that follows transnational strategy has to adopt different competitive strategies in different countries to overcome competition. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on transnational strategy for services. These are the sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you. Marketing ethics refers specifically to the application of the basic morality in the conduct of business with their consumers and other related parties. Marketing ethics can be rightly defined as the systematic study of how moral standards are applied in the judgment of marketing decisions, behaviors, and institutions as right or wrong. Moving on to an ethical service exemplified example of the Oberoi Hilton, in this case Care for People. In 2008, the Oberoi Trident Mumbai was attacked and part of it were destroyed due to terrorist attacks. 2 days later, when PRS Oberoi, the ex-chairman of Oberoi Hotel, returned to the hotel, he realized how much was destroyed and how troubled his employees were. Known as Vicky Oberoi did 2 things. He promised his internal customers, as in the employees, that they would not lose their jobs and would be paid their salaries. While recreating the hotel, the Oberoi Group spent INR 175 crores and only the exterior of the hotel remained unchanged. Moving on to the importance of ethics in service marketing. Number 1. Helps in customer-marketer interface. Since marketing is at the forefront of all business activity, it is often charged with unethical conduct. Moreover, marketers act as a trustee of the buyer, and buyers often rely on what is communicated to them through marketing communications. Hence, being ethical in marketing practices is of utmost importance for an organization. Next, facilitates preservation of socially desirable value system. The value system of the society is deteriorating day by day. It is only through ethical practices that the societal norms can be preserved. Same holds true for business and marketing as well. Hence the need for business and marketing ethics. Number 3. Ensures competitive advantage to the organization. The present day business environment is highly competitive. Hence, behaving ethically can prove to be a competitive advantage for a company. Enhanced reputation, sustained long-term profitability, customer loyalty, and greater employee commitment are all the outcomes of being ethical. In this case, the example of Burger King. To prove that the fast food chain has removed artificial preservatives, flavors, and colors from its ingredient, it let its signature Whopper rot instead of using its perfect and flawless photographic image. The campaign was known as the Moldy Whopper. Moving on to number 4. Improve quality of recruits and increase retention. A good company attracts good employees, suppliers, investors, and customers who will be happy to help the company to achieve goals. Great marketing practices make new marketers feel like their time on the job will make a difference, and so will be less likely to change jobs, as will suppliers and other people involved. And finally, the aspect of goodwill. Goodwill and strong reputation among clients and associated are the benefits which companies cannot afford to overlook. Not only will customers believe that the company cares for them, but will also associate the brand with pleasant feelings and experiences and spread the word. Now let's look at some unethical practices in the service sector. Ethical marketing entails making honest claims and satisfying the needs of potential and existing customers. It boosts credibility and trust, develops brand loyalty, increases customer retention, and prompts customers to spread word about the products or services you're marketing. Unethical marketing, on the other hand, can send wrong signals about your services, destroys your brand reputation, and possibly leads to legal problems. Now let's look at some unethical marketing practices that you must avoid when promoting services. First, making false, exaggerated, or unverified claims. It's an attempt to attract potential and existing customers to buy their services. Some marketers use false statements, exaggerated benefits, or make unverifiable claims about their offers. Next, bad-mouthing rival products and services. Emphasizing the dark side of your rival services in a bid to turn potential customers towards your own service is another common but unethical marketing practice. Next, using women as sex symbol for advertising. The rate at which even reputable brands are resorting to this unethical marketing practice is quite alarming. If you observe TV, billboard, and magazine advertisements, there's something common to most of them. Probably a half-naked lady used to attract attention to the service being advertised. Next, using fear factors. This is another common unethical marketing practice. We often hear the marketer saying something like, "This price limited time offer. If you don't buy now, you might have to pay much more to buy it later because the offer will end up in 2 days' time and the price will go up." The only motive behind the statement is to prompt the potential buyer to make a decision on the spot. Fear tactic is a very common practice when selling insurance and mutual funds. Next, plagiarism of marketing messages. Though uncommon, some business owners and salespersons engage in using the exact marketing messages of their competitors to market their own products or services. Creativity is an important aspect of marketing, and using another business marketing messages just shows that your creativity is fraudulent. And finally, exploitation. For marketing efforts to remain within ethical limits, the prices of your offers must be equal to or less than the value they give the buyer. If the value is less than the cost, it's unethical. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on ethics in services marketing. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you.
Self-service technologies are interfaces that allow customers to perform services free from the involvement of a direct service representative. Consumers value services that are convenient and hassle-free. Many people-to-people service interplays are being substituted by self-service technologies. These services are meant to provide the convenience customers look for. Examples: traditional vending machine, self-pumping at gas station, self-checkout at hotels, automated teller machines. The other example is of Chili's. Chili's has set up a tabletop computer screen in its restaurant so that consumers can directly order and pay by credit card. As a result, the restaurant found users of the service spend more because they ended up buying more desserts and coffee when the screen is present. Now let's look at some of the benefits of SST. Customers spend more on SST. According to a study by Harvard Business Review, Taco Bell, Chili's, and Cinemark have all stated that people spend extra bucks when they order from self-service kiosk machines, often as much as 30% more than they would initially have. Taco Bell in 2015 announced that purchases made through their newly launched digital app are 20% higher than those taken by human cashiers, mainly because people pick up additional ingredients too. They also found that 20% of consumers who would never order a drink initially would buy one when it was offered through the machine. Next up is the benefit of cost efficiency. Businesses might need to dedicate more staff in showing customers how to use their new technologies. But eventually, once the customer gets the hang of it, there will be less need for human staff, thus being cost efficient. Example, Comverse, a tech firm, estimates that the expense to solve a query through a call center was $7, but if done online was only 10 cents. One of Comverse's clients directed about 200,000 calls a week through online self-service support, which saved the company around $52 million a year. The next benefit is of upselling. Due to SSTs, retailers do not have to rely on human cashiers to upsell items. Upselling at times can be uncomfortable for employees as they tend to get awkward in suggesting price add-ons and specials. Whereas with kiosks, you eliminate the same issue. The next benefits, companies get to know their customers better. Self-service kiosk machines collect and provide customer data that companies need to gain insight into their purchasing behavior. One can observe which products are bought together, when and in what quantity. When all this data is combined and analyzed, it helps in understanding the customer needs and wants and serve them better. Next, convincing customers for SST. Convincing customers to use the technology for the first time possesses one of the big challenges. Customers should have a clear idea of the SST process. They must see a clear benefit and feel that using it will be very easy and convenient. Let's look at an example of TD Bank. TD Bank across Canada gathered a group of customers who were invited and told to test out a new ATM model. After using it, the people found that these automated teller machines, instead of handing cash or depositing checks, rolled out gifts for the users. Many people received generous gifts. However, they weren't the only ones to get thanked. Over 30,000 TD Bank clients received credit from TD on #TD Thanks You Day, getting a direct $20 deposit who were logging into their online banking. Now let's look at various examples of services and SSTs. First, airport. Self-service kiosks in airports are loved by travelers with minimal luggage. These machines save a lot of time in check-in and baggage drop as they speed up formalities. Next up are restaurants. McDonald's has already adopted self-service technology. They have been testing their kiosk machines since 2003 in the US, and by 2020, most of them would be implemented across all US locations. Supermarkets. Supermarkets are introducing SSTS for customers to enable them to scan and pay for their shopping. Besides being more efficient in saving time for customers and employees, these machines also have a language option which are useful for foreign customers. Employees now can focus on their important tasks such as stocking shelves. The best example in this case could be Amazon Go. Amazon Go, operated by online retailer Amazon, is a chain of convenience stores in the US. It has 26 store locations in New York City, Seattle, Chicago, and San Francisco as of Feb 2020. These automated stores enable customers to purchase products by only using self-checkout stations. Next up are hotels. Hotels use self-service technologies in the form of keyless entry systems where customers have a wholesome hotel experience. This saves both time and money by eliminating plastic key cards and promoting mobile check-in. Hotel booking apps have the system embedded which guests can download easily by OTA confirmation email or the hotel website. The app even makes rebooking easier. The given key is encrypted and made available in the app downloaded in the guest's mobile phone, which is listed with the guest's phone number, meaning that the key is non-transferable to any other phone or inapplicable for any other room. Also, the key is exclusively active during the time the room is booked for. There are some of the 5 hotels that take keyless guest entry with open key. Next is an example of Starbucks. Starbucks launches self-service kiosks in China. Starbucks opened new self-service kiosks installed in select Freshippo stores in China. Star Kitchen, the new smart self-service kiosk, is a classic example of how online meets the offline world. It is installed inside Freshippo stores that are dedicated to processing delivery orders. Now let's see the use of SST in the new normal. The introduction of touchless self-service. Avalon Airport has extended an alliance with Millennium Automation, signing a deal to make it the first airport in Australia to launch touchless self-service. Passengers at Avalon Airport will manage their interaction with the kiosk and bag drops by head movements. Cameras installed in kiosks will trace the movements of passengers' head and guide the cursor on the screen. Passport slots will be eliminated and passengers can scan the passport by holding it open in front of a camera rather than by inserting into slots. This technology in today's time reduces the risk of a potential virus transfer between multiple passengers. According to Avalon Airport CEO Justin Giddings, the partnership between Millennium and Avalon demonstrate how quickly a response to COVID-19 virus can be implemented. This solution will allow passengers to go through the self-service experience without touching a device, thereby providing a seamless, intuitive, and safe method of moving quickly through the airport. And finally, to conclude, did you know? $31.75 billion are expected to be accumulated by the global self-service technology market by the end of 2020. Almost all retail shops, restaurants, and public spaces make use of self-service technology in some form.
So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on incorporating self-service technologies. These are the list of sources and links referred to for the content in the video. Thank you.
Let's start with the first one. Customer empowerment. Customer empowerment is when customers are given the information and tools that they require to make an informed decision. By providing them with options and resources, the company gives a much better buying experience. It enables them to make a decision on what kind of brand experience they would want to have. This approach may seem risky, but it could potentially pay off big time. Digital advancements in the era have significantly altered customer relations. The internet, most importantly, has enabled customers to send their judgment and reviews around the world with the click of a mouse. Moving further, good customer experience is essential for the growth of the company, as a happier customer is more likely to talk about it to others, acting as advocates of the brand. But on the other side, when someone has a bad experience, they will speak to more people about it. 90% of angry customers were observed sharing their story with a friend, and now they can possibly share it with strangers too. Online websites such as Angie's List, Yelp, Google Places, and Urban Spoon are other popular platforms where consumers share their experiences of the brands. General user-generated content platforms such as YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook also offer venues for complaining. Now let's look at some examples of customer empowerment. Example 1. An agitated customer, Hassan Syed, humiliates British Airways with promoted tweets after losing luggage. Air passenger Hassan Syed was left dissatisfied after his father's luggage was lost by British Airways while his parents travelled from Chicago to Paris over the weekend. While most travellers resort to just tweeting their bad experiences, Syed took complaining to a whole different level. He promoted his tweet so his complaint would reach as many as possible. He paid $1,000 to promote the tweet and informed the news website Mashable that he aimed to reach the UK and New York markets. Making use of his Twitter handle, Syed made his complaint by saying, "Don't fly British Airways, their customer service is horrendous." Moving further, Syed shared the details of the progress of the campaign, revealing that the promoted tweet garnered a total of 14,600 engagements and 76,000 impressions. Right before the airline could respond, Syed posted a second message which read, "I refuse to stop running Twitter ads until British Airways finds the lost luggage." About 4 hours after the message, British Airways responded from its Twitter account saying, "Sorry for the delay in responding. Our Twitter feed is open from 9 to 5. Please DM your package reference and we will look into this." A spokesperson for the airline told BBC, "We would like to apologize to the customer for the inconvenience caused. We have been in constant touch with the customer and the bag is due to be delivered today." Syed ultimately posted a final positive tweet saying, "I got what I wanted. I win." The other example of customer empowerment, Sir Patrick Stewart's Time Warner complaint. Even Sir Patrick Stewart couldn't get Time Warner's cables set up at ease. Sir Patrick Stewart, the guy who played Picard, tweeted, "We all have been there, but not all of us are famous. So an angry Time Warner tweet from someone else probably wouldn't have gotten much attention." Stewart's tweet almost received 1,800 retweets and more than 800 comments along with plenty of press coverage. The other example, billionaire Elon Musk's response to an unhappy Tesla customer on a Friday night. An unhappy customer posted a complaint on Twitter mentioning Elon Musk saying, "A terrible experience with a very pushy sales guy from the Tesla Stanford shop while shopping for Model X." To which Musk responded that it was certainly not okay and he had sent out a reminder to Tesla stores that the people should look forward to their next visit as customer satisfaction was their primary goal. Now let's look at the other reality of customer being part of service production, which is called customer co-production. Customer co-production behavior is described as the perseverance and enthusiasm of a customer to engage with the service provider in terms of time and effort during the service conception and the production stages. Customers in reality play a vital role in the delivery of any product or service. Their statements and actions affect the quality of the service they experience along with the output of the frontline employees. Customers, when actively engaged with the service provider, often feel more valued and feel a stronger connection with the brand. This co-production could potentially put pressure on employees and lessen their satisfaction significantly if they vary from customers culturally or in other ways. Let's look at some example of customer co-production. The first, McDonald's kiosk. McDonald's bids farewell to cashiers and welcomes kiosk. As of 2020 update, self-service ordering kiosks will be implemented at all US locations. Other fast casual brands such as Panera and casual dining brands like Chili's have already embraced the trend. Next up is Starbucks kiosk. Starbucks has rolled out a self-service kiosk at Alibaba's Freshippo stores in China. The kiosk called Star Kitchen allows customers to order coffee and pastries by scanning a QR code on their mobile phones and paying for the item via Alipay, and while they wait, customers can shop at the Freshippo outlet. The other example is of airlines. The Hawaiian Airlines discovered an alternative method to save passengers time with the introduction of Tag@Home, which is a home-printed bag tag trial, which means passengers do not even need to worry about tagging their bags upon arrival at the airport. This print-at-home bag tag approach was also favored by Alaska Airlines, become the very first US carrier to launch the product in April 2014 to complement its self-tagging kiosk. According to Curtis, who is a vice president of customer innovation, the Self-Tag Express initiative is part of the airline's long-term intent, which is to be easiest airline to fly with. And the final example of DHL. Over the years, DHL has hosted workshops with customers in Germany and Singapore to find inventive solutions and enhance the client's experience. The company has now condensed these workshops into DHL Innovation Centers. One excellent idea amongst all that came out of the session was the Parceleptor, a drone utilized for deliveries over challenging terrains. The aforementioned approach to customer coordination confirmed to be fruitful. DHL held over 6,000 co-creation sessions with customers as of early 2017 and extended its network of exhibition centers in North America, inaugurating its third innovation center in Chicago in 2018. DHL's co-creation trials have also raised customer satisfaction scores over 80%, causing higher client retention on the plus side.
So that's it, folks. This brings an end to a comprehensive take on the subject of services marketing. Do subscribe to our channel where you'll witness such videos daily. Thank you and stay tuned for more videos.